Hello everybody, Tommy here, and Final Fantasy is a game that can leave you with more questions than answers. In tonight's video, we're going to be exploring some of those questions as I attempt to explain the entire story of Final Fantasy 1. All the mysteries, everything. We're talking about Garland, we're talking about the Warriors of Light, we're talking about the Sages, we're talking about the crystals, the Warriors of Chaos, the Fiends of Chaos, whatever you want to call them. So strap on in, hop on your chocobos, grab you a meat myth kebab, and let's dive right in and see if we can unravel the mystery here. Let's see if we could shed some light on what's really going on. Most importantly, too, the time loop, right? The time loop and also chaos. Yeah, let's jump right in and check this thing out. Whoa, look at that thing. Let's start by checking out the beginning of the game. The world lies shrouded in darkness. The winds die. It's going a little slower than I thought. So here we have kind of the imbalance is starting, right? The world is being overcome with darkness. The crystals are being affected. The seas rage. Okay, and we're going to talk all about that. I'm going to explain what exactly is going on and why this is happening. It could be easy to say that the four fiends of chaos are sucking powers from the crystals, right? But I think the earth decays. I think that this requires a bit more of an explanation, and that's why I chose to make this video. Let's talk about it. Okay. But the people believe in a prophecy, patiently awaiting its fulfillment. When darkness fills the world, 4 warriors of light shall come. After a long journey, 4 young travelers did at last appear. And in the hand of each was clutched a crystal. Okay. Now, the Warriors of Light have these crystals right here that are being shown on the screen. They each have one from each of the 4 crystals of elements, the 4 elemental crystals. And we can also see that, if we can get the tutorial off of my screen, we can see that in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. You see 4 crystals. They're kind of grayed out right now because we haven't yet restored their power. However, those are the crystals that are being held by our Warriors of Light. So we have fire, earth, wind, and water. Each of us has one of those crystals. Okay? This is going to be important for when we go to explain everything else. So let's keep that in mind. Okay, so we go into the throne room to speak to the king. And he tells us that his daughter, the princess, has been abducted by Garland, who is a knight in service of the king. Something must have happened. Maybe he turned evil. We'll get there. So we show him the crystals, and he immediately recognizes us to be the Warriors of Light, as foretold in Lucan's prophecy, and he asks us to go and rescue his daughter, who's being held in a place called the Chaos Shrine. Okay, and a kingdom full of knights, you would think that he would just invade the Chaos Shrine and take down Garland. But apparently, he's tried this before, and Garland is the finest swordsman in the kingdom, and all of his knights were no match for him. So Garland gets to just kind of keep the princess, all for himself. Okay, the king also tells us that he has heard that we wish to journey to the continent to the north. That's interesting because we just got here. How would he know that? Well, he knows that because we're trying to get all the crystals, and the king apparently knows where some of these crystals are located. Interestingly enough, the bridge to the north was destroyed or as he puts it, lost long ago. It was very clearly destroyed, however. It's no longer there, making passage impossible. What happened to the bridge? When did it get destroyed? I'm not sure, but we can speculate once we get a little bit further into this story. We'll talk more about that. Once we travel back here to the corner of the castle, we'll find some sealed doors here that are locked with something called the Mystic Key. If you talk to one of these old men that are standing guard, they'll tell you that the ancestors of Corneria have sealed the weapons within this treasure room 400 years ago. So we do have a timeline of something. They have a key, which is the Mystic Key, the only key that can open these doors, and that key was given to the Elf King until the coming of the Warriors of Light. Now, this happened 400 years ago, so right here we know that at one point there was an Elven King. Not just an Elven Prince. There was an Elven King at one point. Whatever happened to him? Well, I guess we'll find out here pretty soon. Cornelia also happens to be the City of Dreams. This is what it's called. This is one of the first NPCs that you can talk to and encounter in the game. As a matter of fact, if you come here first, she might even be the very first person that you talk to. And she refers to Cornelia as the City of Dreams. It's hard to kind of piece that together. Through looking at other Final Fantasy games, we know that dreams can be a thing. I'm kind of thinking about Final Fantasy X right now. However, I'm not going to speculate on this or try to make any connections. This could be one theory as to what's actually happening in this game, though. However, there's no other bits or pieces of information that really collab with this. I just kind of wanted to point it out that maybe everything in this game is a dream. Maybe not, though. Let's continue our journey of talking to people. As a matter of fact, let's come up here. We're going to talk to this gentleman up here in the corner. I think he has some more information for us that may or may not be useful. He tells us that Sage Lucan said something about finding the crescent moon. Then he just up and left town. So we know that Lucan came here at one point, shared the prophecy with the king, and then left. He goes to a place where something about the crescent moon. So if we want to find Lucan, we're going to have to find this crescent moon. So our heroes venture north towards the Chaos Shrine so that they can confront Garland and rescue Princess Sarah. A couple things to note about the Chaos Shrine when you do get here is that it's lying in ruins. It looks completely destroyed. Even when you come inside, the walls are all, chipping apart. The pillars are falling apart and cracked. What exactly happened to this place? Another thing to note about the Chaos Shrine is that there are doors inside that are sealed with the Mystic Key. Now, if the Mystic Key was given to the Elf King 400 years ago, might we kind of assume that these doors were also made right roundabouts 400 years ago? It seems like, I believe that right there, 400 years ago, is when the calamity began and when horrible things started to happen to the world. And so the people who lived back then thought to themselves, well, geez, we're going to have to wait a while for the Warriors of Light to come about. Let's make these doors and seal them up with the key. But isn't it interesting that we see some of these rooms inside the Chaos Shrine itself? Interesting. So the people of Corneria, at one point, I'm putting two and two together here and thinking that the people of Corneria at one point used the Chaos Shrine not only to house their treasures, but for other things as well. What did they use this Chaos Shrine for anyway? Well, let's talk about it. Inside the main room of the Chaos Shrine, we do in fact find Garland, Princess Sarah, and a few mysterious bats. What's mysterious about these bats? They're bats inside of a shrine that's crumbling and falling apart. What's so mysterious about them? Well, we'll talk about that when we get there. First of all, let's talk about Garland and what maybe this shrine was actually used for. We see in the very dead center of the shrine what appears to be an orb, or maybe even a crystal of some sort. However, it's not colorful like the crystals we have. It's dark. It's black. Let's talk to Garland and see what he has to say.
The king will have no choice but to exchange the kingdom for his daughter's life. Cornelia will be mine. Who's there? Humph. The king's lapdogs. Do you have any idea who you're messing with? You really think you have what it takes to cross swords with me? Very well. I, Garland, will knock you all down.
So very cool intro to this character here. And with that, the Warriors of Light prevail in the battle against Garland. He has now been defeated. No dialogue, no commentary, he's just simply gone. We rescue Princess Sarah. You've come to rescue me? I am Sarah, Princess of Cornelia. Words can never be enough to thank you. That's the first time anyone's ever defeated Garland, so it just goes to show you how powerful this character really was. The king, obviously very worried for his daughter, would have sent knight after knight to come and rescue her. Every single one of them was thwarted by Garland, but the Warriors of Light had no trouble taking him down and saving the day. You must allow me to show my gratitude. Please, accompany me to Castle Cornelia. Yeah, we could do that, but we're still also very curious as to what this orb is in the middle of the Chaos Shrine. More on that here in just a sec. When we return, the king thanks us. He definitely believes in Lucan's prophecy about the warriors coming to save the day and dispel the darkness surrounding the world today. And now we get a chance to hear the prophecy in its entirety. Well, apparently, we've heard it twice already, but that was only part of it, so let's read the rest. When darkness veils the world, 4 warriors of light shall come. If they cannot gather the shards of light, the darkness will consume all. The 4 crystals will never shine again. And then he goes on to explain to us where the 4 crystals are. Now, the 4 crystals are tasked with keeping balance in the world. In the world of Final Fantasy, there has to be a balance between light and darkness. If there's too much darkness in the world, the crystals summon or send for 4 warriors of light to come and defeat the darkness and bring a balance to the world. And vice versa, if there's too much light in the world, the crystals will send for 4 warriors of darkness. Or in this game, in Final Fantasy 1, we call them the 4 fiends of chaos. Are they one and the same? Yes, they are. Yes, they absolutely are. So we're kind of skipping ahead here, right? But the main point, the main takeaway that I want you guys to understand is that at one point, maybe 400 years ago, there was too much light in the world, and the crystals had no choice but to create warriors of darkness or fiends of chaos, however you want to talk about them, however you want to call them or address them. The crystals had no choice but to do something to bring about a balance, to take light down a notch or 2, or even completely destroy it, so that way things can go back to normal and back into a balance. Okay, the king also gives us this line here: restoring light to the crystals is our only hope of ridding the world from the monsters which plague it. So the monsters weren't always here. But now we're tasked with doing this, returning the light to the crystals, and ridding the world of the monsters which plague it. So if the crystals have their light again, monsters go bye-bye. 400 years ago, maybe things were a little bit different. We had to take light down a peg, but now, in today, 400 years later, if you will, we have an overflux of darkness, and the Warriors of Light now have to take darkness down in order to bring about the balance that I was talking to you guys about. Okay, now this is greatly important, what we're about to talk about next. So let me get through this dialogue and then I'll explain what's going on here. This loot has been entrusted to the princesses of Cornelia for many generations. When he abducted me, Garland took this loot as well. I want you to have it. It may aid you on your journey. Okay, and we obtain the loot. Now, why is that important? Well, we want to restore light to the crystals. Let's take a look at it in our key items. It simply says, a sonorous instrument of great beauty. However, when we play this loot finally later on in the game, it does play the Final Fantasy Prelude, which we hear in just about every single Final Fantasy game. Kind of a shame that we don't see this loot later on, or if we do, I haven't found it yet, but if I do find this loot in any other Final Fantasy titles, I will be sure to let you guys know about it. I'll probably make an entire video about it, as a matter of fact, because I'll be that excited. But what the loot does is it is supposed to destroy the barrier of darkness when played. Now, I have this burning question in my mind about Garland and why he wanted this loot. So let's talk about it. So when we talk to Garland, he tells us that he kidnapped the princess so that he could exchange her for the throne of Cornelia. He wanted to be the king of this place, but that doesn't answer the question as to why. What went wrong? What caused Garland to become so evil and so wicked that he would do such a thing? Why would he turn on his country, his king and country, and kidnap the princess? Was it simply for the throne? Princess Sarah talks about how he took that loot and he had her over that crystal of darkness, and that's where I'm going to head to next after this short cutscene here. We're going to head to that crystal and we're going to talk some more about this. I don't think that Garland simply wanted to trade the princess for the throne, although it probably sounded nice at the time. I think his main goal was to obtain that loot. He doesn't talk to us about that, but I think that was his main goal. He wanted that loot more than anything else. And I'll tell you guys why as we continue the video. Here we are, back in the Chaos Shrine. And if we talk to this black crystal, because that's what it is, it'll tell you that it shines ominously, and the air hanging in the room seems slightly distorted. What was Garland trying to do in this room that involved that loot? Well, we'll get to that. We'll talk about that when we get there. But it is important to note that this is in fact the black crystal. The game calls it the crystal. Now, in the original Famicom version of this, they're referred to as orbs, and this is called the black orb in the Famicom version as well. So it is the same thing as the crystals that we are attempting to restore light to. So this means that there's not 4 crystals, one for each element. There is in fact a 5th one as well, and we are looking at it right now. And as you can see, it shines ominously. It has not lost its splendor. It has not lost its glimmer. It is shining, very prominently shining, as you can see right there. With that said, let's continue our quest. With the bridge rebuilt, our heroes venture north across it, and they take one last passing glance at the Kingdom of Cornelia before they go. And so their quest began. As the 4 warriors of light, they felt overwhelmed by the great task destiny has placed before them. They did not even know the true significance of the 4 crystals they held in their hands. The crystals that once, long ago, held a light that shone so brilliantly. The time for their journey had come. the time to cast off the veil of darkness and bring the world once more into light. Traveling north from Cornelia, our heroes stumble upon a cave, a mysterious cave. It looks more like a dungeon, really. As we come inside, we meet Matoya, the witch. What role does she play in this game? My eye! My eye! Ouch! I can't see a blasted thing without my crystal eye. Who could have stolen it from me? So we find Matoya the witch. She has had her crystal eye stolen from her, and without it, she can't see. At this time, the heroes don't really, apparently don't think much of it. If we take a look around, we'll see that we have some brooms that are kind of cleaning the floors on their own, much like in the animated movie Sword in the Stone. So we can probably gather that Matoya has quite a bit of power, maybe. She also has all these skulls from these beasts and monsters that maybe she has slayed or killed during her time. Maybe she uses them for spells, but I'd like to say that she, based on the evidence that we see just by looking around, she's quite a powerful witch, powerful person, perhaps. We'll talk about her just a little bit more later as the story continues as well. Heading further east, we'll take our heroes to the town of Pravoka, which we learned from an NPC in the town of Cornelia that it has been overrun by pirates.
Those blasted pirates! They're running around looting and pillaging like they own the place. You've got cannonballs of steel to be taken on the great pirate Bike. Keyhole 'em, boys!
After the heroes defeat the pirates and save Pravoka from the town being pillaged every day, I assume, the pirate captain gives us his ship. It seems he's had a change of heart, and he plans to buckle down and be the hardest worker in town, which is very nice. However, this is a video about explaining everything, and with that said, with a ship, let's actually go outside for a second here, guys. With that said, we now have a ship. And we learned from the beginning of the game that there is no wind. How then does the ship sail? Well, that's interesting. Let's talk about it for a second. That one is, honestly, it's a little bit harder for me to explain that. The only thought that I have about this, the seas still do rage, which would allow us to kind of bounce around on the waves a bit, but that doesn't really explain how we're able to sail from point A to point B. One of the only things that I can come up with or think of is that the pirate had quite a crew. When he first attacks us, we are attacked by 9 different pirates. It's quite a number. He had quite a few boys with him on his team. And we even see the sails kind of pumping out in the animation there. But there's no wind, so the only thing that I could think of or come up with is that the pirates are below decks with oars, and they are sailing us, they are rowing us in the water from point A to point B. Sorry I can't offer a better explanation. That's really all I got as far as that goes. That one's kind of tough to explain there. Here in Pravoka, we also find an old man who tells us that he fled here from Melmond, which is a town far to the west. It is truly a pitiable sight. The earth rots and monsters attack at night. Is there nothing you can do to help? Out of all the NPCs here in town, he's probably got the most useful bits of information there. So the earth rots. We learned in the beginning of the game that the earth is starting to rot away. This is definitely where the heroes are going to want to go to lend their aid, find out what's going on with the earth rotting, and stop it before it could spread even farther. Before we leave Pravoka, we want to talk to this young lass, this young green-haired lass here, and she tells us that there are elves living across the sea, but the elf prince has fallen into a deep sleep and hasn't woken up. So we know that the Mystic Key was entrusted to the king of the elves. The elves must still have this key, and the Warriors of Light need it. Because we learned from the old men in Cornelia Castle that the mystic doors were sealed with the Mystic Key 400 years ago, and there should be some pretty good treasure inside waiting for our warriors. So let's head there next to talk to the elves. So our heroes have traveled across the sea and made it to a town called Elfheim. Let's talk to some of the villagers here and find out what we can learn. They talk to us about their prince, which we've known has fallen into a deep sleep. Let's see if we could find a few more NPCs around here. The guys in blue don't really say much to us yet, but they tell us that when the time is right, they'll be able to reveal the future to us. Well, that's pretty cool. Let's head up this way, and we have a little bit of a graveyard there. No one knows where Astos, king of the Dark Elves, has gone. So we have mention of a king, an elf king, but he's the Dark Elf king, right? Couldn't possibly be the same guy, right? On a journey I once took to the west, I wandered into an ancient castle. Not a soul could be found inside, and the whole place gave me the creeps, so I got out as fast as I could. If the prince does not awaken, there will be no elf king. We will be at the mercy of the dark elf's evil power. So could we theorize that maybe Astos is the elf king, but perhaps he turned evil? That's one theory. I don't think so. I think that the elves had their own castle, the dark elves rather, had their own castle. I think that they had their own civilization at one point, but something happened. When you talk to this particular elf here, he tells you that he wandered into an ancient castle that was located to the west. He kind of speaks of it as if the elf people don't really know what that place is. It's kind of a mysterious place that they don't really know anything about. I want to explain this, because we will end up going to that place, but more on that here in a little bit. Let's keep talking to some more elven villagers. This particular gentleman tells us that weapons and armor made of mithril are sturdy and powerful. You'll definitely want to give them a try. However, I've always found it weird that the elves actually don't sell mithril here. They talk to you about it and tell you how powerful it is, but they don't actually sell any. Our prince was meant to become the elf king, but what will happen now? I don't think this guy in blue will say anything. And let's see, golly, I think that's about all we can learn from the town. Let's head on into the castle and see what other dialogue they have for us inside. One more thing, the graveyard. When you talk to this particular gravestone, it says, "Here lies Link." In the original Famicom version, it says, "Here lies Erdrick," which is the main character of Dragon Quest I, and also a very prominent hero throughout the series. I believe they actually give you a timeline for which he lived, year to year, what year he was born and what year he died. I believe that the decision was made to get rid of that, however, because Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy ended up kind of becoming under the same banner at some point. They all became Square, or Square Enix eventually, so instead of taking a stab at their rival Dragon Quest, they chose to instead take a stab at Nintendo. That's all I think that is, really. Because we wouldn't want to say that Link is in some way, shape, or form part of the Final Fantasy world, right? Who knows? Maybe it's another Link. Maybe there's lots of guys named Link. Anyway, onward with the video. He tells us, this gentleman here tells us that Astos' curse has put our prince into a deep sleep from which he cannot awake. Please, will you not aid our slumbering prince? So now we learn that Astos, the Dark Elf King, has put a curse on the prince. now we know what happened. Now we know how he fell asleep. The Dark Elf King Astos stole into the castle and placed a curse on our prince. Then Astos carted away the castle's treasures. Well, that's not good. Sounds like this Astos guy is just really up to no good. When we talk to the gentleman here outside the wall, he tells us that he's heard rumors of a witch who can brew any potion you might or could imagine. Let's see. I think her name was Matoya. So now we know about Matoya. Now we know a little bit more about Matoya. She can brew some powerful potions. She has access to some powerful alchemy. That kind of makes her character a little bit more cool, a little bit more useful. Maybe if we were to help her and get her eye back, she might share some of these potions with us. This character just simply lets us know about some dwarves. We learn here that this treasure room has been secured with the Mystic Key. The Mystic Key, we've been looking for that key. So after the ancestors of Cornelia entrusted the elves with the key, might it be that they possibly made their own rooms and also put in their own treasures in which to be sealed? Suppose maybe Astos, the Dark Elf King, couldn't get into those rooms, so thankfully the treasures are still there. When we come into the prince's room, we talk to his healer, which tells us that the prince has slept under Astos' curse for 5 years now. Now that's some new information. We knew that the prince was sleeping. We find out that he's under a curse, but it's not until this moment that we learn that he's actually been sleeping for quite some time. He's been asleep for 5 years. There must be a concoction that can rouse one who sleeps so. But where? So if we're piecing 2 and 2 together, we want to help Matoya the witch so that she can brew some sort of a potion that can help the prince wake up. Once the prince is awake, we should be able to get the Mystic Key from him because we're the heroes. And the Mystic Key is meant for us to have so that we can open the treasures and all the hidden rooms that are within the game. Let's continue our quest. While in Elfheim, we learned about some dwarves that exist. We want to come here and talk to them because they also fill us in on a little bit more about what's going on. And they talk about their smith. This is the guy we want to talk to. With a crystal eye, even the blind can see. I hear that the dark elf Astos nicked one belonging to Matoya. So now the story comes together. Astos the dark elf went into Matoya's cave and took her crystal eye. He probably did that maybe before or after the prince went to sleep. We're not 100% sure exactly when that transpired. But now we know we need to take down Astos and get that crystal eye back from Matoya so that she can brew us a potion that can wake up the prince so that we can get the Mystic Key and get all the treasures and all the loot. Speaking of the Mystic Key, I believe that if you come down here, we can actually find another door that was secured with the Mystic Key. What information does this really tell us? Well, it tells us that the elves, the dwarves, and the humans, probably at one point, were all on the same page. They all wanted to keep their treasure safe for a time when the Warriors of Light emerged. They knew from the prophecy, which... Wait a minute, the prophecy? Wouldn't they have learned about the... We learned that everything was sealed away 400 years ago. Wouldn't everybody have learned about the prophecy 400 years ago? But I thought Liu Khan gave the prophecy. Could it be that Liu Khan is really 400 plus years old? Yeah. I guess we'll ask him when we get to him. So, what in the world do we need to do next? Well, we need to find Astos, the Dark Elf King. Traveling northwest of Elfheim will bring us here to this ruined, ancient-looking castle called the Western Keep. And it is in ruins. It almost looks like the Chaos Shrine, right? The pillars are cracked, the walls are destroyed. It looks like it's been in disrepair for quite some time. Let's travel around a bit so I can show you guys what's going on in here. And what we stumble upon is none other than a door that is secured with the Mystic Key. Another door secured with the Mystic Key. Huh. So, whatever people lived here must also have been on board with what was going on with the calamity, the end of all things. They wanted to keep some treasures that could not be destroyed, that could not be stolen, that were absolutely safe in a room, that one day the Warriors of Light might come, and they can gift the Warriors of Light with the key to open the doors and obtain the treasures. So whatever place this happened to have been at one point was on board with that. In the throne room, we see statues of soldiers holding weapons and bearing armor, and we also see this mysterious figure clad in green sitting upon a throne. When we talk to him, he is called the King. He tells us he was tricked by Astos, the king of the Dark Elves, and now his castle has fallen into ruin. Really? Well, it sounds like Astos was up to no good maybe about 5 years ago, but this castle looks like it's been in ruins for quite some time. If I could only retrieve the crown from the Marsh Cave, I would be able to restore my castle. Might you bring me the crown? Well, your sprite already has a crown on your head right there, but yeah, sure. So he says that he needs a crown. He would be able to restore this castle if only he had the crown from the Marsh Cave. And he claims to be the Elven King. Well, what's going on here? What exactly is going on here? I talked about a theory a little bit earlier where I said that maybe Astos is the Elven King, but he just kind of turned evil at some point. Because where is the Elven King? I would assume that Astos either killed him or Astos maybe is him. But if that's the case, we would have to wonder, how did the Elven Prince acquire the Mystic Key then, when it was given to the Elven King? Wouldn't Astos, if that were the case, wouldn't Astos just simply have the key himself? Maybe at one point he gave it to the Elven Prince for safekeeping. But how do we explain the crown, and how did it end up in the Marsh Cave? Many, many mysteries that we're going to have to unravel and solve. Let's see if we can do just that. I also would like to mention that if you are curious about Astos the Dark Elf King and his lore, I do have an entire video on my channel dedicated to just that character, where we can find out just how evil of a freak he really is. But if you're wanting to just watch this video too, that's fine. I'll just probably re-explain it here pretty soon once we get what we need and we actually encounter the little devil. Next, we are going to travel towards the Marsh Cave so that we can get that crown, and the king, the Elf King, right? He can restore his castle to its former glory, or so he says anyway. Hey guys, just wanted to let you know that if you're enjoying this video, please let me know by clicking the thumbs up button. Also, you might consider subscribing so you don't miss out on any of my future content. Thanks. With that said, let's get back to the video. Heading south from the Western Keep will lead us here to the Marsh Cave, where the crown, the king's crown, rests. We're here to retrieve it, give it back to the king, and see what happens. Taking a look at the innermost level of the Marsh Cave, we notice that it looks less like a dungeon and more like a treasure storage house. Look at all these rooms full of treasures for the Warriors of Light to find. So what's the story behind the Marsh Cave? How did the crown end up here? Let's say that Astos, the king of the Dark Elves, killed the king of the Light Elves, if you will, or regular elves. Wouldn't he have just taken the crown then? How would it have ended up here? Maybe the Astos was the king of the elves. I mean, it's the only king of the elves that's mentioned, after all. The more I talk about that theory, the more I kind of like it better. So anyhow, we see that the crown is here in the Marsh Caves. It is in the lowest level of the caves, and it's also protected by these powerful enemies called Pisco Demons. So apparently somebody wanted to keep it safe and keep it away from Astos. But who could have done that? Well, maybe somebody in the Elven Kingdom knew the true power of that crown and did exactly that. They wanted to keep it as far away from the king as possible, as so that no more evil could come out of him. But here, interestingly enough as well, we see doors that are secured with the Mystic Key. Not in a keep, not inside the Elven Kingdom, not inside Cornelia, but here at the very depths of the Marsh Cave. I suspect that this was in fact a treasure house at one point, and the elves made these doors and sealed them with the Mystic Key in hopes that the Warriors of Light would come and claim the treasure. However, something that they didn't expect was that their treasure house sank to the bottom of this marsh that they built it in. Maybe they didn't quite account for that. Either way, the crown is here inside this treasure chest. Let's retrieve it. And with that, we have attained the crown. Let's check it out in the key items and see if it has any more information for us. It's just a crown that shimmers mysteriously. For now, as far as we can tell, it's the crown that goes on the king's head. It's the king's crown, the Elven King's crown. That's all we really know about it at this time. Well, we do know one thing, though, about the crown. According to the Elven King, if we give it back to him, he can use it to restore his kingdom or rebuild his keep, as he tells us. So that's where we're going right now. We're on our way back to the king. Let's give him this crown, put it on top of his head, and see what transpires. And here we are, back at the Western Keep, as it were. It lies in ruins. Kind of makes you wonder, if you haven't figured it out by now, or if you haven't been paying attention to me spoiling things. I think that door right there is also sealed with the Mystic Key, if I haven't said that before. But why would the king be here? You know, his throne room is pristine, by the way. Unlike the rest of the castle, it's not destroyed or lying in ruins. It looks like it's well kept. It looks even kind of clean and shiny in here. But why wouldn't the king be with the rest of his people? Why wouldn't he be at the Elven Kingdom in the Elven Castle with all the rest of the elves? Why would he be hiding here? When we speak to him to give him the crown, he laughs at us.
You fools fell right into my trap. I am Astos, king of the Dark Elves.
It is my theory that... One theory is this, okay? Say he was the king of the Dark Elves. This keep would then probably have been the kingdom of the Dark Elves, or at least whatever happens to be left of it. Maybe this explains Astos' hatred towards the elves and towards his want to rule over them, in maybe some way get a sense of vengeance, a sense of revenge. Maybe the Dark Elves and the regular elves went to war at some point, and this is all that's left of their kingdom. All of them were absolutely slaughtered. It kind of puts matters into perspective a little bit there, right? Because if light were destroying darkness to that extent of genocide, wouldn't the crystals then have to step in and do something about that?
With the combined power of the crown you now hold and the crystal eye I already possess, I will become the true Elf King.
Interesting. So he apparently feels like he's going to be very powerful as long as he obtains both of these items, the crystal eye and the crown. He really feels very confident in the power that he has.
It is useless to resist me. I can take what is mine by sheer force.
Anyway, the Warriors of Light are going to put a stop to that. And he's now defeated. Another question that we might have is, if Astos wanted that crown so badly, Why didn't he just go into the Marsh Cave and obtain it himself? Why did he have to try to trick the Warriors of Light into going into Marsh Cave for him to get the crown? Maybe he was afraid of the Pisco demons. But if that was the case, wouldn't that kind of insinuate that he knows the Warriors of Light are stronger than him? He really underestimated the Warriors of Light, or maybe overestimated his own powers. As soon as he got the crown and the Crystal Eye together, he really thought that he was going to beat us. But that didn't really work out for him in the end. Upon defeating him, he drops Matoya's Crystal Eye. It says that it's a transparent orb of crystal. Interesting word, right? Considering this game is all about crystals. Anyway, with the Crystal Eye, we want to bring that back to our friend Matoya the Witch, give it to her, and see if she can maybe brew us a potion to wake up the Elven Prince. Let's go talk to her. Upon re-entering Matoya's cave, we give her back the Crystal Eye. She's pretty excited to get it back, as a matter of fact.
Don't worry, I have something to give you in exchange. Take this potion. It's the most amazing potion in my entire collection.
It's the Jolt Tonic. Notice how... Let me make sure dialogue is done.
Ah, I can see again. Ah, you're still here? I don't need you anymore, so be on your way. You're not as attractive as I thought you'd be.
Yeah, you old pervert. Okay, anyway, I was gonna say, notice how she didn't actually get her eye and then have us explain to her the situation and then sit here and craft a potion for us that we needed. She just kind of handed us the Jolt Tonic, the exact potion that we need in order to awaken the prince, almost as if she knew what we needed before we even got it for her. Interesting. So the Crystal Eye doesn't maybe give her like any sort of powers of perception. It actually just makes her be able to physically see. Because somehow she knew we needed that potion. The Elven Prince has been sleeping for 5 years. I guess she could have woken him up before this point in the story, but that's okay. Anyway, we got the Jolt Tonic. Let's bring it to the Elven Prince and wake him up. Okay, here we are back in the Elven Castle. I did find a little bit of dialogue from this young elf here, this young elven warrior here, if you will. He does say that the Dark Elf King Assos stole into the castle, so basically he snuck in here. If he was already the king, why would he have had to do that, right? Either way, I kind of enjoy both theories of him being the Elven King, him being the father of the prince, but he just turned evil, or maybe he was the last remnant of a elven race that was wiped out and just seeking revenge. Here's the sleeping prince. Let's go ahead and give the Jolt Tonic to the healer here. This Jolt Tonic may be just what we need to break the curse and awaken the prince. I will try it at once. Your Highness? Your Highness! I was having a terrible nightmare. Am I still dreaming? You're the legendary warriors. Something tells me I'm not dreaming. I shall heed the legend, as it was told to me and my forefathers. The time for me to pass on the mystic key to its rightful owners has come at last. So his father at some point told him to give us the mystic key. That's how he knows, right? Yep, the prince is finally awake, and we have brought peace back to Elfheim. I am awake and strong again, all because of you. Thank you, Warriors of Light. Perfect. With that said, we now have the mystic key. We know that there are sealed doors in Cornea? You know what I meant. There are sealed doors right here in the Elven Keep, I believe. There are sealed doors within the Dwarven Kingdom. There are sealed doors within the Western Keep, and there are even sealed doors within the Marsh Cave. So that's what we're going to be doing now. We're going to go open up all the sealed doors. Here's the first one. No big scene or anything. The door's just kind of open now. And now we can get all the treasures that were left for the warriors 400 years ago, or maybe just throughout time. The civilizations knew that something bad was happening and that they needed to leave something to help the heroes who wouldn't quite come for another 400 years. Let's go ahead and start opening this up. We do have mithril hammer, that is, some gold, and some bronze gloves. So that's about it for that one. Let's go ahead and check the rest of these treasure houses. Upon entering the treasure house here in Cornelia, we will find the nitro powder has been hidden here for many, many years. Nitro powder is a sort of a device or a compound that will allow for a very large explosion. When we talk to the dwarves, I haven't really been there for very long. I just stopped by for a minute. But if we go there and talk to them in full, we'll learn that they are actually looking for this nitro powder and say that they can use it to widen the canal. A couple other things to obtain here, and with that, we're onward to the dwarves to go blow the canal open, giving us access to explore the rest of the world. Just quickly, I didn't want to miss this dialogue because it is very important for what we're going to be talking about towards the end of this video. This character here seems to know a bit more about the lute. He says that it is a beautiful lute handed down for generations to the princesses of Cornelia, and it is said to have a unique power. It can shatter the gateway of evil. It can shatter the gateway of evil. So would that be like a sealed door and we're shattering the gateway to allow evil in? Or is it something to keep evil out? Unsure at this time, but one thing's for sure. Garland wanted that loot. There's a little bit more that we can talk about there. Let's talk about the rest of that as we head towards the end of the game. But for now, business. And now here we are, back in Mount Druagar, where the dwarves dwell. Speaking to some of them will reveal that the earth has started to rot. We've already known about that. However, it says that he began in the west, but now the decay spreads. Sounds like it's going to overtake the whole earth if we don't do something about it. In this room we find Smith the Smith, interesting name. He just mentions that there's a legendary metal called the adamantite, which he can use to craft a magical sword. Let's go talk to Narek. He's the dwarf we need to talk to who can use the nitro powder. One more dwarf to talk to before we head to Narek. If we talk to this dwarf, he'll tell you that he's looking for some Levystone. Why? I'm not 100% sure, because after obtaining the Levystone, you can come back to this dwarf, and I don't think his dialogue changes. I don't think he takes it from you. There's no option to actually give it to him. But he explains that it's an amazing material that can make things float in the air. Interesting. Anything? We can make just about anything float in the air? This is going to be important for later on when I attempt to explain how airships work in this game. And here we are, we found Narek. He's the dwarf in the back of the cavern, wearing the green cap. Nitro powder! The explosive force in this powder will have my canal open in no time flat. I owe you, bairns. Let's do it. Let's blow this sucker up. There we go. Now we can blast this rock to smithereens. What you standing around for? That powder's set to blow. Unless you plan on going with it, you best get out while you still can. He's right, you know. Let's hide behind this wall. He's gonna blow this thing up. He's gonna blow this whole wall up, and it's gonna show you right here. We can now exit this little circle that we're in, and we can get out to the rest of the world map, allowing us to finally get to Melmond. Wait a minute. Didn't we have somebody say that they came here from Melmond? I'm pretty sure that was a character that was in Pravoka, was it not? If this canal has closed up and has been closed all this time, how would anybody have gotten here from there? I actually don't have an answer for you guys, but interesting thing to speculate and keep in mind. Oh, darn it. I missed recording it, but Narek explains that he can't wait to see what lies beyond the canal. However, when we go beyond the canal, I don't think we ever see Narek ever again. So what he does and where he goes is a downright mystery. And here we are at the town of Melman, just a short sail west of the canal that we just blew open will take us here. This is where the earth is rotting. As you can see, it is not very green here. It is more just kind of brown, or there's just patches where there used to be ground, but there is not anymore. We also notice these gravestones that are all over the entire town. We did learn earlier that there are monsters, or maybe even vampires, that attack at night here sometimes. Maybe that has something to do with the earth rotting? We don't know. Another interesting fact is that there's a dwarf here. Again, how did this dwarf get here if the canal was closed? I have no idea. But he does say that his name is Watts, and he's come here from Durgar, which is where the dwarves live, so we know that he wasn't born here or anything like that. He is, in fact, a dwarf, and he's here to find out the Springhide. I'm not sure what that means, but I think he's talking about the reasoning as to why the earth is rotting away. Let's talk to some of the rest of the villagers here and find out what we can learn. If we talk to this young man here at the south of the village, we learn that there is an earth crystal which is close by. He talks about and explains that if it were to regain its glow, life will return to the earth. The hills and valleys will again be green. Well, that's exactly what we set forth to do to begin with. We want to restore the light to the crystals. We must be on the right path. If we talk to this gentleman, he will explain that there is a vampire that does indeed attack at night, I'm assuming, because it's a vampire. And also we were told that it attacks at night by a gentleman in Provoca, I believe. But more importantly, it destroyed the church, leaving our city in shambles. Is there nothing we can do to stop the ruination of the earth? So it seems like the vampire is indeed connected to the ruination of the earth. I'm assuming that this poor destroyed building to the right of me here is, well, at least was probably the church. So one thing to keep in mind, there is no church in Melmond. It got destroyed. Almost every villager here has something useful to say. This gentleman explains to us about a man named Sada, who lives on the southern tip of the continent. He is a wise man who knows much. So we're going to want to talk to Sada at some point, although it doesn't really explain to us why. Talking to this young man, he'll explain to us that the ancients, that's an interesting word. The ancients. Where have we heard that before in the history of Final Fantasy games? Anyway, let's continue. The ancients possess something with the power to make ships float in the sky. So if we can get back to airships, if we can jump back into airships for a second here. Although they seem very fancy with these big propellers and all that kind of stuff, it seems like and maybe that's just for decoration, or maybe it is actually for them to kind of change direction here and there, but what actually powers the airship and makes it go into the sky at all is the Levistone. Without the Levistone, the airships just kind of fall to the ground, right? Which is sort of interesting, actually. You would think that the ancients, right, would have the technology to build actual airships and not really need anything like the Levistone. But who's to say what the Levistone is? Is it something that's found or mined or dug up in the ground? Or is it something that the ancients actually crafted themselves? When we get a little bit further into the game and we see the inventions of the ancients, I think it's the latter. I think that they invented the Levistone myself personally. But let's get a little further in the game and we'll talk more about that a little later. Just a few more bits of dialogue and people to talk to before we head out. We have Dr. Une. He claims to be a genius, so we have a very smart man here in town. We also have this guy here. He talks about the Cavern of Earth being south of Melmond on a peninsula called Devil's Tail. It used to be the closer you got to the cave, the more fertile the soil, but now it's a barren waste. So now we have a heading, we know where to go. We're pretty sure we know the whereabouts of the Earth Crystal. We're pretty sure that there's a vampire that is behind all of the problems that we're having here. The very last person I want to talk to is, this is kind of sad here, but let's talk about this theory that I have here anyway. If you talk to this young lady here with the green hair, she'll tell you to stop by her father's shop, okay? Weird. Well, what shop is your father's? We have a weapon shop. We have two magic shops right there. We have an inn and an armor shop. Maybe the remnants of a shop here? What I'm getting at with this is that there is no item shop in all of Melmond. We already know that the church was destroyed, but there's no item shop here. Perhaps her father owned the item shop at one point, and perhaps that item shop was here at this little square, whatever is left of it. Maybe the vampire came at night, destroyed the item shop, killed her father, and left her just kind of a broken woman missing her father. So absolutely distraught and heartbroken by the devastation of this town, she doesn't even actually realize, she can't even comprehend or put together the fact that her father's not even here anymore. Anyway, that's more of a darker theory. Let's not go there. Maybe her father's shop is just this weapon shop, perhaps. Anyway, onward. We have an Earth Crystal to save. Sorry guys, I missed this one. He says, long ago a prosperous civilization thrived in the Northland. Now it's fallen into ruin. Is that the same people as what this guy's talking about? The ancients? Either way, we learn about some kind of a civilization. It's fallen into ruin now. There apparently was something really bad that happened. Some sort of calamity, perhaps, that ended up destroying quite a bit. Not just a town or two, but the entire civilization. It is now gone. There's nothing left now. The Warriors of Light must head into the Earth Cavern, I believe it's called. They must restore light to the Earth Crystal. And now it is time for our heroes to enter the Cavern of Earth. This is it here. As you can see, the rot is spilling out from the mouth of the cave. And the heroes are now going to go inside, see if they can find the Earth Crystal and restore it to grace. The heroes fight their way to the very bottom floor of the Cavern of Earth. And inside they find this mysterious blue bat. They're going to have a talk with it and find out that it is none other than the vampire that has been terrorizing the nearby village of Melmond. All things in this world are destined to end in death. The seal cannot be broken, and so the earth shall rot, so blah. You cannot alter destiny. Mere mortals cannot kill the undying. So blah. And that begins our battle with the vampire. He kind of hints on a little bit that there's something else going on here other than what we think is going on here, right? We think maybe the vampire has something to do with the earth rotting, but it turns out that there's something more sinister at work here, if that can even be perceived, if that's something that we could even imagine. The vampire's pretty bad. Let's take him out and find out what's really going on. We end the vampire's evil reign. Undying or not, we definitely killed him dead again. And behind him is a treasure box. Inside the treasure box is something called the Star Ruby. This is some dialogue that I never really went over, but inside of a cave close by, yes, another one, we'll find a giant, and we find dialogue, I believe, in Melmond explaining that this giant loves to eat stones, especially precious rubies. or precious jewels anyway, and what we find here is a star ruby, so maybe we can offer that to the giant and see if he can get out of our way, since he's blocking that cave. If we travel just a little bit further into the earth cavern, we find a stone slab is set in the floor, and an evil force seems to emanate from within. Well, we have the loot, and that's supposed to break the barrier of evil or something like that, but it doesn't really give us the option to use that. So, with us kind of being out of options, the earth is clearly not being restored to its former self. The earth is still rotting and decaying even after destroying the vampire. The warriors have no other choice. We must go, feed this ruby to the giant, and venture further west where we find the old man Sada. A wise old man. Maybe he can help us. Maybe he has some information for us. So let's head there now. This is the cave where the giant dwells. Let's go inside and see if we can make him be our friend. It's actually even called the Giant's Cave. And true enough, look at this guy. He's pretty big. Kind of roars at us.
You have Star Ruby? Give me Star Ruby and I let you pass.
Okay. It's like a big giant jawbreaker to him, I guess. He's gonna eat it.
Nothing tastier than rubies.
Right on. I guess he's gonna get happy and move out of our way. You don't want to join our team? You want to help us fight the evil? No, that's okay. That's okay. Just getting out of our way will suffice. Now we can travel further west. And here we find the Sage's Cave, which is almost being guarded by that giant. Maybe he was friends with the sage inside here. We have some pots, but you can't really explore them. We just kind of want to continue to the back of the cave where we find this old man here warming himself by the fire. Let's go ahead and speak to him. This is none other than Sada. He was mentioned to us by one of the villagers in Melmond, I believe.
So, you are the ones who defeated the vampire, eh? He was but a servant. The beast corrupting the earth crystal lurks much deeper within the cavern.
So just like that, we learned that the vampire was just a servant. Just a bodyguard, if you will. A placeholder. He wasn't really... he didn't really have much to do with the earth crystal or the earth rotting. He was just kind of there to protect whatever else is further inside.
Here. Take this staff with you and use it behind the vampire's chamber.
And with that, we obtain a mysterious item called the Earth Rod. And after that, he just kind of tells us to restore the crystals to grace. If we go to our key items and look at the Earth Rod, it'll tell you that it is a rod imbued with the power of Earth/nature. That's cool. That's cool. This part of the game kind of leaves us with some more questions than answers, though, really. So how did it get sealed like that to begin with, I wonder? Did the vampire place the seals there? Is that why the vampire was important to whoever is truly manipulating? It's the Lich. It's the Fiend of Earth. He wants to destroy the crystal, but... well, maybe not destroy it, but he definitely wants to drain its power, which is really bad for us because obviously the earth is rotting. Anyhow, with that said, let's head back into the earth cavern. We want to use this earth rod on that seal and see if we can open it and delve even deeper into the earth cavern where the crystal rests. So here we are back at the depths of the earth cavern. We've found this slab yet again. Let's interact with it. And no dialogue, no nothing, just kind of disappears and turns into a staircase. So let's talk about that for a second. Now we could enter the cavern and head all the way to the back of it where the earth crystal is going to rest. But who is this mysterious man Sada anyway? Does anybody question that? Who is this man? What does he do? What is his purpose? Maybe he's the one who placed this seal here. Maybe he found out that the Lich was here, draining the crystal of its power. Maybe he didn't even know that part. Maybe he just found out that the Lich was here and just didn't want to deal with it, didn't want him to be loose upon the world, and just decided to seal him in. But little did Sada know that that's exactly what the Lich kind of wanted or didn't mind happening, since his purpose was to be here draining the Earth Crystal anyway. I suggest that maybe he's the one who sealed the entrance because he has the rod that opens it. Why wouldn't he be the one who sealed it? But he does have the Earth Rod. He must have been some sort of a caretaker of the crystal at some point, perhaps? Maybe he was just doing what he felt was right. Also, when you enter his house, it's not called Sada's Cave or any other cave. It's called the Sage's Cave. So he's a sage. Maybe he has something to do with Lucan and the 12 sages. I guess we'll find that out later, or maybe we won't. There's really not much information here as to explain the Earth Rod or anything else other than apart from what I said. So now the Warriors of Light will head to the furthest reaches of the cave and see if we could restore light to the Earth Crystal. And here they are now. The Warriors of Light have made it to the very bowels of the Earth Cavern, and we have discovered that the Earth Crystal there looks pretty dead. It doesn't at all look like the Dark Crystal that we found at the beginning of the game. It looks much like how the ones do in our inventory. They're just kind of lifeless, devoid of any light, dull. And also we have this yellow orb here. We're going to now interact with it.
Who speaks to me?
I don't know. That's a bad voice for him. I don't know. Maybe you should have like a deeper one.
Who speaks to me? I am he who feeds on the power of earth. I will not be disturbed by mortal men. I am the Lich, fiend of earth.
So once again, just like the vampire, they have no faith in mortals. They're not even worried because we're mortals. Let's show the Lich just how wrong he is. And with that close call, as you can see, the Fiend of Earth is now defeated. No dialogue from him or anything like that. He's just dead and gone. All we really know about his true purpose, though, is that he was just trying to feed on the Earth Crystal, right? Or was there maybe something a little more sinister going on? Either way, we got the Earth Crystal back. That should take care of the rotting earth and the spread that was coming from it. Everything should be back in order as far as the Earth Crystal goes. If we take a look at our inventory, the Earth Crystal is now lit up. You can kind of barely tell with that one, but it is in fact lit up. Let's go give our warriors a much-deserved rest, and we'll head to the next location. So the heroes head to their next destination, but where is that exactly? We don't see any ports further north. We learned that from, I think, an individual in Melmond. But we do know about Sage Lucan and his prophecy, and that when he left Cornelia, he went to a place that was something of a crescent moon. I think we find that hint back in Cornelia. There's an old man in the corner who talks to us about where he went. And do we see any place on the world map that looks like a crescent moon? We sure do. So we're going to go ahead and head there and see what we can find. Okay, and we arrive here on the map next. This is a town called Crescent Lake. A very important town to the lore and what we're trying to discover in this video, so let's go to that location. On the east side of this town, we found a pathway leading through the trees that takes us to this clearing where this creepy area where the sages like to hang out, I guess. This is the 12 sages spoken about. The one in the blue hat is indeed Lucan. They have a lot to say, so let's start. Let's just start by talking to this guy here. 12 sages are we, guided to this land by the stars and prophecy. Okay, so their prophecy told them to come here to this exact town, I guess. Why wouldn't they just be waiting for us in Cornelia, so they could just talk to us in person and let us know everything that we need to know? Who knows? Jerks, I guess, or they're just following their prophecy, right? I don't know. Let's talk to this next guy, where he tells us that 4 great crystals exist in this world. The light that once shone within them is now lost. The 4 fiends of chaos block the power of the crystals, claiming it as their own. So now we know that there is not just 1 crystal, we know that there's 4. Okay, the beginning of the game tells us that the earth rots, the wind dies, and the seas rage, which kind of hints on to maybe 3, but this guy tells us that there is indeed a 4th one. And their power is now lost. There's not just 1 fiend, there's not just the fiend of earth, there's a fiend for every crystal that the warriors of light are tasked with defeating in order to restore light to them. Let's talk to the next guy right here. He tells us that fire, earth, water, and wind, these are the 4 forces that compose our world. He doesn't sound like he had much to say there, but if we think about it, the 4 fiends are also connected to these 4 elements as well, aren't they? More on that in just a second. Let's keep going around this circle and see what else they have to say. The source of the 4 forces are the altars scattered throughout the world. Defeat the fiends that have taken root there, and lift up the crystal you carry to the altar. The crystal should regain its brilliance. Yeah, we kind of already did that with the earth crystal, right? So we already know how to restore them. We just have to go find the other 3. Let's keep talking to them. The 4 fiends plot to rule the world, both past and present. The fiend of wind appeared 400 years ago, followed 200 years later by the fiend of water. Together, they laid waste to the civilization in the north. So that was 200 years ago. The fiend of wind came, took control of the wind crystal, that doesn't really say he took control of the wind crystal, right? But he did show up 400 years ago. What he was doing for 200 years, I'm not sure. Just waiting for his buddy to arrive, I suppose. But the fiend of wind and the fiend of water laid waste to the civilization in the north. This is important too. Let's get through the rest of the dialogue and we'll talk about it. The fiend of earth rots the land. Yeah, we know that already. Where the fiend of fire passes, all is engulfed in flame. That's not good. When all 4 crystals shine once more, return here, and all will be revealed. Are you guys keeping stuff from me? Is there more you guys should be telling me that you're not telling me? Probably. Bring the light of the 4 crystals to us, warriors of light. Only you can do this. Yes, we can. The volcano Mount Golg rises to the west of this town. The fiend of fire long slept within its passages, but she has awoken 200 years before her time. Vanquish her before the world is consumed in flame. So she woke up so she wasn't even supposed to wake up for another 200 years, but something triggered it to where she would wake up now. Well done, warriors of light. You've defeated the fiend of earth and restored the crystal's light. Sadly, this has drawn the notice of the fiend of fire, who was not to have stirred for another 200 years. Take this canoe and go and face the fiend in Mount Golg. So defeating the fiend of earth woke up the fiend of fire, who was not supposed to be around for another 200 years. However, the fiends are gathering, and they must all be together in some way, shape, or form. So losing one automatically raises another. So that you know, that during this time period of, what is it now, 800 years, that they would eventually all come together at the same time. So talking to Lucan himself, he says, I am Lucan. I see a cycle of wrath, a dim light guided by destiny, about which our entire future revolves. Okay, this cycle of wrath he's talking about, he is referring to the time loop. However, we won't be talking about the time loop for a little while now. We did learn from one of the sages here that the four fiends are trying to control not just the past, but the present as well. So there is time there, and then he mentions a cycle of wrath, but we don't really have enough information to talk about that quite yet. What we do have enough information about, however, is this. I want to bring our attention back to this guy who talks about how fire, earth, water, and wind, and that these are the four first forces that comprise our world. Well, those are also the same as the four crystals, right? The four crystals hold those same elements, but furthermore, and more importantly, is the fiends of chaos also hold those elements. Let's see, where's the guy who talks about how they laid waste to the civilization in the north? So, it might sound a little dark, it might sound a little grim, but it sounds like maybe about 400 years ago that something was happening, and the crystals had to do something about it. As we know, Final Fantasy is the story is it's a balance between darkness and light. Okay, so too much darkness in the world, and the warriors of light are summoned to put an end to the darkness. However, vice versa, if there's too much light in the world, then four warriors of darkness will be summoned by the crystals to put an end to the light that is going on in the world. I'm kind of trying to go about this step by step as we go, but I want to skip forward and just reveal everything to you guys right now. However, I'll be good and I won't do that yet. However, the four fiends of chaos are definitely the warriors of darkness. I believe that in some way, shape, or form, they were brought about by the crystals in order to stop an overflow of light, because too much light can also be a bad thing. And we'll talk more about that and what exactly happened as the story progresses here. For now, let's take our canoe and head to Mount Golg, because we have another crystal that we need to revive. That's also kind of another thing I wanted to talk about. If the Fiend of Fire did not actually wake up until the Earth Fiend was defeated, then how come that crystal lost its power too, right? Shouldn't the crystal right there shown in our inventory shouldn't it have been a light this whole time? Shouldn't it be shining and brilliant this whole time until the Fiend of Fire came to drain the crystal of its power? After all, in the beginning of the game, it says, you know, the three things: the wind dies, the seas rage, the earth rots, but it doesn't say anything about fire, and the reason why is because fire's fine. At least until after we defeat the Fiend of Earth, and then it's most certainly not. Anyway, we are going to head on to Mount Golg, or perhaps we might do a little side quest first. Okay, here we are at Mount Golg. I decided that we're going to go ahead and skip the side quest for right now. We're just going to go ahead and head into Mount Golg at the Sage's bequest. So our heroes are going to venture in and see if we can defeat the Fiend of Fire and relight, if you will. Maybe reignite, who knows, the fire crystal. Here we go. And after a grueling trial, our heroes make it to the bottom of Mount Golg, which honestly looks like it's getting ready to erupt. It looks like the heroes probably got here just in time before the next catastrophe happened. In here, we find the fire crystal. Its light is gone, taken by this evil red orb.
So, you are the ones who defeated the Fiend of Earth and roused Merilith from her slumber.
Because she's like a snake thing.
The power of the burning flame is mine, and mine alone. Those who would oppose me shall burn in hellfire.
Wait, isn't that Ifrit's thing? Ifrit? However you want to say that. Anyway, the Warriors of Light are going to go against the second fiend, the Fiend of Fire, Merilith. And with that, the heroes defeat Merilith, the Fiend of Fire, and we're going to go ahead and rekindle the fire crystal. There it is right there. One of us, as you can see, holds up their crystal. Looked like my black mage. That makes sense. Maybe. I don't know. And that's it. I feel like the crystals should speak to us and be like, thank you, heroes, but they don't. And that's fine. Let's go ahead and head back now. The heroes are going to head back now to the sages in Crescent Town and see if they give us any other information. They don't really seem to say anything new, but that's okay. I know where to go next. I did want to draw our attention to this guy, though. If I don't know if he said this piece of dialogue before. It seems new to me. Let me just go over it really quick. 400 years ago it was wind. 200 years ago it was water. Then came earth and fire, the four forces that make up the world. Just like the four crystals. So see where my mind kind of goes to the Warriors of Darkness or the four fiends of chaos. They're literally the elements, you know what I mean? And when he says it like that, you know, the four elements that make up the four forces that make up our world, it makes them seem so necessary, and they really are. Once we get a little bit further into the game, I'll explain why the four fiends of chaos, or the four warriors of darkness, however you guys want to call them, are absolutely necessary. They wrought destruction to the ancients, to the civilizations of the north, and it was 100% necessary that they did that. When we get a little bit further into this video, I'll show you exactly why. I'll explain exactly why we needed them to do what they did. However, as you can see though too, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Because now it's like what the crystals wanted the Warriors of Darkness to be kind of ended up backfiring, and now they're kind of using the crystals for their own personal gain. That's not necessarily the Four Fiends of Chaos is doing, however. They're not necessarily being controlled. They did kind of turn, you know, straight up evil in a way, but that's going to be another character that's going to be introduced. We're going to talk more about that here pretty soon in the video. Right now, we're going to draw our attention back to the side quest that I was going to do. I don't know if... I'm trying to recall right now, and off the top of my head, I can't recall any one NPC that draws our attention to this place. But if we take our canoe and we kind of explore this river a little bit more, we'll find another dungeon. I'm going to go there now. If you're on your way to Mount Golg, as a matter of fact, you'll find your way to this cave in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. This isn't the way to get there. You kind of have to go a roundabout way, but that might be one way that you might find and learn about this cave. Or the Warriors of Light. The Warriors of Light learned about it, right? Okay, going a rather roundabout way, the Warriors of Light come to this mysterious cave, which is the Cavern of Ice. Again, I'm pretty sure that there's an NPC somewhere in the game that talks about this place, but as of right now, I can't really recall. I've talked to every NPC in the game, so it's probably there in one of my previous videos, but the Warriors of Light are going to traverse this cave of ice, the Cavern of Ice, and get to the end of it and see what's inside. And here we go at the very bottom of the ice cavern. We find this mysterious rock. You know, it occurred to me that I keep calling this a side quest when in fact this is actually very necessary to the game. This is not optional. We have to come here. We just didn't have to go there right then. We could have gone to Mount Gold first, and that's what I did. So now we're here at the bottom of the ice cavern. We find this mysterious rock. We're going to go ahead and fight a horrible demon that attacks us, and we'll see what this triangle-shaped rock actually is. Okay, and what we're going to obtain is called a Levy Stone. We've heard this mentioned a couple of times throughout our journey so far, and now we actually have it. If we go to our key items, it'll say that it's a mysterious rock that floats in the air. However, I believe this to be a little bit more than just a rock, and the reason why I believe that is because it allows airships to fly. This is what the ancient people, or the Lufenians as they come to be known, this is what allows them to actually fly their airships. So I feel like it's not just a mere rock, like a mere stone. I feel like it's some sort of very advanced technology. Maybe the Warriors of Light have never seen anything like it, so the closest thing they could think of to call it is a rock. But I think it's something very advanced. And the reason why I believe that is just because of the Lufenians and their nature and the way that they are and the things that they've built. Like they literally have robots. Like I'm not kidding. It's robots that the Lufenians have. Things that shoot lasers, things that have guns. We haven't made it quite that far into the game yet. But if they're able to build those things, they shouldn't need something as primitive as like a magic stone or some weird stone. It sounds to me like it's more advanced technology that they built in order to get their airships to fly through the air. So now that we have the Levy Stone, the Warriors of Light are going to head to the location of the airship, and we're going to get our airship right now. Okay, and the airship is going to be right here in this desert. There is an NPC that leads us here as well, although I can't quite remember exactly who does. But somebody does tell the Warriors of Light to come here, that there's an airship buried here, I'm pretty sure. And using the Levy Stone here, we'll actually raise the airship up out of the desert, out of the sands, if you will. And that's it. We now have an airship. You obtain an airship. Okay, so my train of thought with this is that if the Lufenians can build things like robots that shoot lasers, why wouldn't they just be able to build an airship that doesn't require a Levy Stone, right? And you'll see propellers and kind of like this machinery sort of aspect to the airship, but I believe all that does is allow us to go in different directions. The Levy Stone is what's actually making this thing fly. As stated. So if we take, I believe if we take the Levy Stone to any NPC who's been asking for it, they just repeat their same dialogue, that you can't actually give it to anybody. This is what the Levy Stone is for this airship. So now that we have it, we can now explore the rest of the known world, and it's a bit of a trip, but we're gonna try to make it to the rest of these towns. The Warriors of Light are going to head to the rest of these towns that we haven't explored yet. Any other areas that we haven't explored yet, we're going to make it to. We have a nice tower here in the middle of the desert. Another town is right up here. So we're going to go to these other towns, talk to the townsfolk, and see what other lore we can find. Okay, so I've decided that the first place we want to go is these mysterious caves that are along the ocean here. If you go inside, you'll find that they are called the Dragon Caves, and we find a strange race of dragon-like people who claim that long ago, man and dragon actually used to live together. This one tells us that long ago the Northland was filled with beautiful shrines and towering mechanical castles. So very long ago. He says that, but if you talk to the sages, it was only 200 years ago, which is a pretty long time, I guess, that the civilizations to the north were destroyed by Tiamat and Kraken. And these are called the Cardian Islands. Interesting. They have no love for senseless killing. It's a rare thing to have humans visit us here, and they tell us that we should speak to Bahamut, their king, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. And here we are at Bahamut, the Dragon King. Let's go ahead and speak to him. He will tell us that he is indeed the Dragon King Bahamut. I don't have a voice for him at this time. Sorry for the people who are enjoying my voice acting. I confer honor upon those whose strength and courage are true. Return to me with a token of your courage. And that's all he really tells us. Let's talk to some more of the dragon people and see if we could find out any other information about that. Okay, if we talk to this dragon right here, he tells us that it's customary for dragons to venture northeast to the Citadel of Trials. There we must test our mettle by claiming a token of courage from within. So, Citadel of Trials, we're going to go ahead and locate that, and lore-wise, that would tell us that this citadel has been here for quite some time. It should be quite old, but there we can find a token of our courage, and that's exactly what the Dragon King Bahamut is looking for, so we will obtain that and bring it to the Dragon King and find out what happens. Real quick before we head on, I found this dragon too who has some interesting dialogue. The form of the token of courage changes with the times. Do not let its appearance deceive you. I think in some other iterations of this game, some other versions of the game, they tell you that it's actually a reflection of the person's heart who has the token. So its appearance could change depending on who is holding it and what their intentions actually are. But this one says it just kind of changes depending on the times. So either way, it's not always what it seems, right? So this is the Citadel of Trials. This is where we will obtain a token of our courage, proof of our bravery, and we will present it to Bahamut. Inside, we'll see that it does appear to be quite old. Not really as, it's in disrepair, but not so much as, say, like the Western Keep or the Chaos Shrine. However, I would assume that this place is quite old if the dragons have been coming here for as long as they claim to. I mean, they said that it's a tradition that they come here anyway, so I'm just assuming that they've been coming here for quite some time. Anyway, talking to this man will reveal a very interesting fact that I'd like to share with you all. As I stated before, I've made an entire video about Astos, King of the Dark Elves. If you guys are interested in that video and just kind of a more of a brief summary on that character, you can go ahead and find it. It's in my archives. I have a playlist of Final Fantasy lore and theory, and it's in there. And this gentleman says the very first line out of his mouth is, "You come bearing the crown I see." And if you take a look in your inventory, the crown, the king's crown that we obtained from the Marsh Cave, never left our inventory. It's been in our inventory this entire time. He continues to say, "Your fortitude cannot be questioned. Indeed not." So simply holding this crown is enough for them to let anybody enter the trials, the Citadel of Trials, and give it a shot. Very well, I shall grant you the right to undergo the trials. I've said nothing. All he did was take one look at that crown. He tells us to sit upon the throne because we have the crown, right? Your courage will be put to the test. If true courage dwells within you, you will find proof of it here. Now, why is that interesting? Well, because Astos, King of the Dark Elves, really, really wanted this crown, right? It's kind of like Garland in the beginning of the game when he kidnaps the princess. He says that he wants to exchange her for rule of the kingdom. However, I feel like the real reason why, sure, he wanted to do that, but I feel like the main reason why he wanted to kidnap her was so that he could obtain the loot. Because he needed to use that on the Dark Crystal. And much like this place, or Astos the Dark Elf rather, I feel like Astos the Dark Elf wanted the crown not only so he can rule over the elven people, but mainly so he could come here. I think Astos' main plan was to be able to come here to the Citadel of Trials, attempt the trials and succeed, and go to Bahamut and show him proof of his courage, and then Bahamut would grant Astos the Dark Elf a class change or some sort of big power-up. meaning that he could definitely become the undisputed king of the elves by sheer force. He could probably even march on Cornea and take over that place as well. So it's a really good thing that the Warriors of Light shut that character down. A very ambitious and underrated character, to be sure. Anyway, like I said, more in my Astos the Dark Elf video, which I've previously made. Now we're going to go ahead and continue the Citadel of Trials. We're going to get to the very end and obtain our Badge of Honor, or our Proof of Bravery. Also, I wanted to mention really quick, too, that inside the Citadel of Trials we find these interesting teleporters, which is far different from anything that we've seen in Final Fantasy before. In this whole game, we've not seen anything futuristic like this, right? It kind of seems that Final Fantasy takes place sometime in the past, yet here we are with these machines that seem so futuristic that they don't even really fit into the game. As you can see, I took the wrong turn there, so be careful or you'll get set back. Which is kind of cool, but it makes a little bit of sense with what the dragons were saying, right? They were saying that the civilizations to the north had advanced things like this. They had mechanical castles and things like that, but they are now gone. So it's kind of an interesting thing to keep in mind. Apparently, maybe this place was built by the Lufenians then. Maybe this place was then built by the Lufenians, thinking about it now. I don't think these are inventions of the dragons, per se. I can't seem to get this right anyway. I'm going to head to the very bottom of this place and get my Badge of Honor. And at the further reaches of the Citadel of Trials, we find a rat's tail. Interesting item, right? However, it is in fact a token of valor and strength. Showing this to Bahamut will prove that we are full of valor, strength, and bravery. And there's also a kind of like a mini-boss against some dragon zombies, which is interesting, right? Because the dragons use this place as kind of like a rite of passage, right? So the dragon zombies here kind of make sense, but kind of grotesque in a way too. They have like undead versions of themselves that are kind of like guarding the treasure chests, guarding the way out, perhaps. Kind of wondering about the crown and if it was actually the way to get in. Like maybe that throne wouldn't even have let me teleport without the crown. Maybe the crown is what activates it. Who knows? In any event, we're going to take our rat's tail, our proof of our bravery, back to Bahamut and see what he says.
Long has it been since men of courage stood before me. Your bravery seems worthy of consideration. That rat's tail you carry is a fitting token of courage and strength. So be it. I shall honor you with titles befitting your valor.
There it is. So this is kind of cool, right? We're all going to get a class change. We're all going to get some glow-ups here. And he just says what everybody says, restore the crystals to grace. What I kind of want to draw our attention to really quick is the fact that our sprites, in comparison to our other sprites that we recently had, we kind of looked like children before, and now we're adults. Now we are bigger, we're buffer, we look more like adults. We look a lot more like grown-ups rather than children. So it kind of makes me wonder, how old were the Warriors of Light? It's kind of very reminiscent of Final Fantasy III. If you guys have ever played that one, you kind of start as Onion Knights, which are children basically, and it's only when they receive the power from the crystals and they change their jobs do they kind of become adults. I've mentioned it before, but it kind of reminds me of Ocarina of Time a little bit, when Link is like a child, and He wants to become the hero of time. However, he's just not old enough, so the temple kind of like keeps him there for 7 years until he's a little bit older, till he's got more of an adult form, and then lets him go again so that he can save the world, because as a child he just wouldn't have been strong enough. Anyway, just kind of a cool idea. Just thought I'd mention that. So with our new forms here, we're now going to go and explore the rest of the towns in the northern part of the world map and see what other bits of information we could find. Remember, we still have 2 crystals that the warriors have to restore to grace, so we're going to start exploring and seeing what we can do to find out about those crystals and their whereabouts. So we are now here at one of the northern continent's villages, and what we learn here is that there is a ferry. Some of the villagers here have been talking about a ferry, discussing a ferry with us. The ferry can apparently go to the bottom of the spring and get something called Oxyale, which is something that will allow us to breathe underwater. If we talk to this pirate-looking character here, this pirate-looking fellow, he'll let us know that he's the one who caught the ferry, and he sold her to a caravan. So our plan then would be to find this caravan, and we want to find the ferry so that we can breathe underwater and enter the water temple. That's right. So I'm going to go look for that ferry. I'm going to go look for that caravan. We also learned just a little bit more information about that tower that we saw just a little bit ago. He says there's a tower in the Yanikurm Desert. That's an interesting name for it. Yanikurm. Huh. Not a lot of places or areas like that are named, you know what I mean? The fields of Final Fantasy aren't necessarily named. The deserts and mountains aren't really named. But this particular desert does actually have a name to it, so that's kind of interesting. Some people think it's nothing but a mirage, so it's called the Mirage Tower. No one can say for sure, though. Legend says the Sky People could soar through the sky and build castles above the clouds. Yep, we kind of learned about that a little bit. Anyway, let's continue. We want to find the caravan that has the ferry so that we can buy her back. I also wanted to mention, because I forgot to, in the previous town that we were just at, there was an NPC, a lady, who mentions that she saw a light streaking off towards the sky and towards the west. So we want to check that out as well. We want to find out whatever that light is. Now we found our way to the village of Onrak, where we're going to talk to some more villagers here. And we have an NPC here who's talking about Kopi. Anyway, he's been spreading some nonsense story about how he saw a shining thing fall out of the sky. That's interesting. So that must be that light that we're looking for. He's talking about it. This gentleman informs us that they say the shrine sank to the sea 200 years ago. Now there are mermaids living there, or so the story goes. The shrine he's referring to is the Water Palace. That used to house the crystal, or as a matter of fact, it still does house the crystal. So Tiamat and Kraken came 200 years ago, wiped everything out, and that's why it rests at the bottom of the sea now. Kraken wanted to put it there in order to prevent anybody from coming there and trying to obtain it, but the Warriors of Light are going to find a way to get down there. Okay, and this lady tells us that her father's with the caravan. Right now they're over in the desert to the west. They usually pitch camp near by a forest near the North Desert. I hope he comes home soon. So she tells you almost exactly where they are. That's our next destination. Okay, and we'll go over why the ferry is so darned important and why we're looking for her so badly. I wanted to draw our attention to what this guy has to say. He tells us that long ago, an ancient race known as the Sky People used a language called Lufenian. My brother Une would always tell me how he'd figure out how to speak it if only he had the Rosetta Stone. So now we're figuring out a little bit about that. That's another part of the story that we're going to be visiting soon. I just didn't want to miss any dialogue and have no idea how to explain to you guys what's going on. Okay, and this guy, this is Kope. He's the one who saw that shining object, and he tells us that he thinks it fell somewhere near the waterfall to the north. No one believes me, but I think it was some kind of mechanical creature. Now that's very interesting. And we'll find out why that's so interesting when we get there. Okay, and this is why it's so important that we find the ferry. She says that she wanted to save the mermaids living on the sea floor, so I made this submarine out of a barrel. But when I went underwater, I started running out of air. I couldn't breathe. It's totally useless. Even worse, it's dangerous. You'd better keep away. So she says the sea floor, but when you take this barrel, when you're actually able to use this barrel and go down there, she actually takes you straight to the sunken temple where the water crystal is, and that's also where the mermaids are. So in order for us to be able to go down to the bottom of the ocean, we're going to need to find some way to breathe underwater. And that's why it's so important that we find the ferry. This here is the caravan, right where the village girl told us it would be. This must be her father. We're going to buy the bottled ferry, and we're going to take it back to town so that we can release it. And it's going to show us how to get the oxyel so we can breathe underwater. But before we go and release the ferry, we want to travel to this particular waterfall here, because inside is a cave, and we want to know about that mechanical creature that fell out of the sky. And sure enough, in the very back of this cave, we find this, robot.
I have been waiting. Take this cube. Tiamat, Flying Fortress, please.
And he gives us something called the Warp Cube. After that, he seems to malfunction. This is actually pretty interesting to try to explain. So the Lufenian people were so advanced that they were able to create robots. However, we have this particular robot who seems to have fallen from the sky. I could only wager a guess and say that he fell from the Flying Fortress. We know that the Lufenian people were destroyed, their civilization was destroyed, but the Flying Fortress which housed the Wind Crystal is actually still there, and it's still flying in the air. It is now just under the control of Tiamat. And this robot seems to have escaped the clutches of Tiamat and found its way to here, where the Warriors of Light found it, and he seems to have given us this warp cube that was definitely meant to be given to the Warriors of Light. This seems very intentional. A cube made of a multi-hued substance. So he came here with the mission of giving that cube to the Warriors of Light, allowing them passage into the Flying Fortress, all for the sole purpose of being able to defeat and destroy Tiamat. So this is an invention of the Lufenian people. They had mechanical castles, they had robots. As we come to find out a little bit later on in the storyline, the robots actually have weaponry. They can actually shoot lasers and missiles and things like that. So if you think about that, how come the Lufenian people fell? Why did they lose then to Tiamat? Well, it's kind of like what I was talking about earlier. It's simply the will of the crystal. Their technology just got too advanced, and it was getting a little bit too out of hand, and the crystals knew this, and the crystals had to do something to stop them. We find the greatest piece of evidence that we find of this is when we actually do enter the Flying Fortress. We come upon a very powerful robot called... Golly, guys, what is it called? I'm sorry. I'm the one playing this game. I should know. It's called the Guardian or something like that. It's very reminiscent of Omega Weapon to me, but I don't feel like it's the same thing. Anyway, it's considered to be the most powerful enemy in the game, being even stronger than the final boss himself. So with that said, when they have such a weapon available to them, why then did Tiamat come and destroy their entire civilization, take over their Wind Crystal and their Flying Fortress, and just absolutely decimate their entire race? Well, that's just it right there. When we get to this Guardian, when we get to this robot, it attacks the Warriors of Light. It seems to be on a bridge guarding Tiamat. So with that said, wouldn't we say that maybe the Lufenians failed? I mean, that's their creation, but here it is, absolutely not attacking Tiamat, and instead attacking anybody who comes even close to Tiamat. It sounds to me like their machine malfunctioned and did not do what it was supposed to do. Left unchecked, it's my firm belief that the Lufenians probably would have destroyed not only themselves, but maybe even the rest of the world with their creations that they were just allowing to get completely out of hand. So that's why it was necessary for the crystals to create the Warriors of Darkness, so that they can put an end to that. Kind of sad that the entire race had to be destroyed and defeated, but that is the will of the crystals. That is the crystals' way. They have a task, and that task is to bring balance to the Force, to bring balance to light and darkness, if you will, right? So that way things aren't getting too out of hand, because as far as I'm concerned, that's exactly what was happening with the Lufenians. They tilted the scales of balance far in the favor of light, and the crystals knew that something had to be done. Their technology was getting out of hand, their weapons were getting out of hand, and even the Lufenians weren't able to control it. And the evidence is with this Guardian droid or drone that we end up running into on the way to Tiamat. I'm going the wrong way because I'm babbling. So we want to, I'm not even in the right town. We want to take this ferry to the pond. I say it's a pond, but if it was just a pond, the ferry would then be able to go to... We wouldn't really need the ferry, right? We could just go to the bottom of the pond and get the Oxyale ourselves, but it's far too deep for us. The ferry, however, has some kind of magic, and she can just go and get it for us, so that's where we're going to go right now. And upon entering the town, that's all you really need to do. The ferry looks very reminiscent of ferries from The Legend of Zelda. That could very well be Navi herself right there, who knows. No, I'm not going to speculate that, but anyway, we want to follow her up this way to the pond, right? And it's just kind of around these trees and up and around the corner, and once we get to the pond, we can see her there. She's going to say, "You're the ones who rescued me from that bottle. I'm sorry about running away, but I was just so scared. I'll get some Oxyale from the bottom of the spring to make up for it, okay?" It's a spring. And there she goes, splashing in. She's going to come back. And that is how the Warriors of Light obtain the Oxyale. Air will flow out of that water for as long as you have it. Air will flow out of that water. You know, that doesn't really make much sense. It's a strange liquid that gushes forth air. I always imagined, before this game, I always imagined that it was like a herb, sort of like what Harry Potter has, right? Where he eats it or whatever, and he ends up getting gills, and he can breathe underwater that way. But apparently this is liquid that gushes forth air, so... cool. That... One way or another, that allows us to breathe underwater, allowing us to go into the water temple, which is where we're going to go next. The warriors must traverse the sunken temple and defeat Kraken, who thought he was safe down there, but not from us. And we're going to restore light to the third crystal. Okay, and here we are back in Onrak, back to the barrel, back to the submarine barrel. You have Oxyale. You are the ones we've been waiting for. Please, save the mermaids. What the hell? Alright, that was pretty terrifying. Talking to some of the villagers in this town will reveal that some of them are really weird about legs and how they're fascinated with legs. And if you put two and two together, they used to be the mermaids. They're the mermaids who escaped and got away from the sunken shrine after the catastrophe happened 200 years ago. Do we want to get in this barrel? Absolutely. We want to head down there now. We're going to save the rest of the mermaids so they don't end up like that freaky ghost we just seen. And we get a cute little sequence there, and here we are. our warriors have made it to the sunken shrine where the water crystal rests, as well as the Fiend of Water. We will now venture forth and defeat the Fiend and restore grace to the third crystal. Okay, I wanted to briefly explain black magic, if I can. In the world of Final Fantasy, your mages have to chant their spells in order to cast spells, which is why the spell Silence will prevent you from casting spells, because your mages must speak in order to physically, or maybe not physically, but in order to cast any sort of magic, they have to be able to speak their spells, their spoken spells. So for a black mage, for example, when they are kind of low level, they start with like fire, thunder, blizzard. They're able to kind of manipulate the elements in order to create this power, this force, and kind of bend it to their will, right? They can either burn things with heat or freeze things with ice. And as they get more and more powerful, they're able to create bigger versions of these three elements, or in some games, maybe even more. As you can see in Final Fantasy 1, we even get access to some time magic. We can kind of haste things or slow things down. Scourge is like more of like a poison, and then we can even, as they start to get more and more powerful, they could even just instantly take the lives of enemies or cause even greater elemental harm, with things like Earthquake being able to open up the entire earth or shake the earth in order to damage enemies. In this particular game, it's more of an insta-kill. Warp is I could talk all day long about this spell and the lore about it, but it's also another kind of like an insta-kill spell. It banishes enemies to another dimension, which we will see later on in other Final Fantasies. But I thought it was pretty interesting when we talk about Flare. Fire is fire, blizzard is blizzard, thunder is thunder, but Flare is a little bit different. As the Black Mage gets to the pinnacle of its power, it's able to create more of like a nuclear explosion, a mini nuclear explosion, if you will, which is exactly what Flare is. They're able to manipulate the atoms in the air, or whatever it is that they're manipulating, and create more of like a nuke. So forget your little fire or ice. I'm blowing you to smithereens. Okay, that's how powerful black mages become, and so with their spoken word, they're able to manipulate the elements in a way to where they can create this kind of an effect. That's kind of my shortened explanation of magic and how that works. I realize that this video is ridiculously long. I'm going to try to probably edit this down to make it a little bit shorter and just kind of hit the main points, but I thought that one was kind of interesting, something to talk about. Alright then, here we go. I'm not going to show it because they just really don't have much to say, but if you go to the very bottom of this place, you'll actually find the mermaids that are down there. If I can go over them really quick, try to explain them really quick. I think that they're kind of like a race that was created by the water crystal itself. Who knows why the water crystal did that? Maybe just for fun, I don't know. Maybe because mermaids are cool, I don't know. So the girl that we talked to before we hopped into the barrel was one such mermaid. If you go down there, they tell you that one of their sisters actually went to the surface world, and they were curious to know what happened to her. I guess the Warriors of Light just don't have the heart to tell them that she's, kind of dead and gone. Anyway, so they have an issue where if the water crystal isn't restored on time, they'll actually turn into sea foam and just kind of wash away with the waves, which is kind of sad. So that's been kind of an issue for them, I guess, for the past 200 years. They've been worried about that, right? Because this whole place sank down to the bottom of the ocean about 200 years ago. And they've kind of been stuck down there, or have been held prisoner there, I guess, by the Kraken for all this time. So I guess the Warriors of Light probably get to them just in time. This place is really big. So anyway, as you can see from this place, it's very destroyed. The Kraken wasted no time in absolutely destroying this place and dragging it to the seafloor. When we're fighting the battles, it doesn't look too bad, but outside of battle, as you can see, this place is in absolute ruins. So it's, like I said, it's been like this for the past 200 years. We're going to make our way to the Kraken and defeat him and restore the water crystal. Okay, this is it. The Warriors of Light have made it to the bottom of the sunken shrine, and they are now going to confront the Kraken and relight the third crystal.
Humph. You humans do impress. I would not have thought to see you here. But do you really think you can defeat the Fiend of Water here in my own domain? Fools! These dark depths shall be your tomb!
They all kind of sound like broken records a little bit, don't they? But like I said, he is kind of shocked almost to see the Warriors of Light actually here, because we are at the bottom of the ocean where no person should actually be able to get to without drowning. However, we have friends in low places, or high places, however you want to look at that. That little fairy really helped us out, so we're going to go ahead and defeat the Kraken now and restore the crystal. And with that, he's gone. The Kraken is dead. We hold up our shard, our water crystal shard. And with that, the third crystal is now restored. There's only one more crystal to get, and that's the wind crystal. And after that, we can go to the Chaos Shrine. So the next place that we're going to go to is... I almost forgot to mention, at the very, very bottom of, or top, I guess, it depends on how you're looking at this darn dungeon, but the sunken temple, where the mermaids were, we found the Rosetta Stone. And the Rosetta Stone will allow us to learn the Lufenian language. So we're going to go ahead now and see if we can find somebody. Some of these towns have kind of given us a little hint on where to go, as a matter of fact. I think we actually find Dr. Une's brother, who tells us that he actually knows the Lufenian language if only he can find the Rosetta Stone. So we're going to go find Dr. Une, who's in the town of Melmond, and he's going to teach us how to speak Lufenian, so we can go to the town of Lufenia, or whatever you want to call that place. The Wing of the Hawk, I guess it were. And we're going to learn the Lufenian language so that we can speak to them.
Just a moment. Let me see that tablet. This is the Rosetta Stone. It makes it possible to decipher Lufenian.
I don't know. I imagine he has a little weird voice like that.
That's what it was. It all makes sense. Here, allow me to express my gratitude by teaching you Lufenian.
I don't know what accent that is. And in like less than 60 seconds, he's able to teach us, less than 30 seconds really, he's able to teach us the entire Lufenian language. And then he just says, restore the crystals of grace. So now we're going to go to the Wing of the Hawk. I can't remember what else that town is called, but it's where the Lufenian people are. And we're going to talk to them to see if we can learn some more information, which we will, because they have some. Okay, so I think that they added this piece of dialogue. I'm not sure that this is part of the original dialogue from the Famicom version, but if it's in the game, I feel like it's canon, right? It's part of the game. So this character right here says that the Lufenians, the descendants of the race that once lived among the clouds, the Sky People. We are the Lufenians, right? They only got destroyed like 200 years ago, but that's still a good amount of time. They talk about the airship, and they say that it was built by one of our ancestors, a man by the name of Sid. I felt like that was a pretty interesting piece of lore. So the Lufenians themselves, throughout time, Sid is pretty much like the master of airships. Like, he's the only one who ever really builds one or knows how to build one, except for when we get to Final Fantasy VI, and that one's kind of rough to explain, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So he was one of these sky people, one of these ancients. I guess you could say that the ancients, the Lufenians, and the sky people are all one and the same. But Sid is the one who designed the airship and figured out how to make it fly and all that good stuff. So that's where that began. Okay, and this guy kind of repeats Lucan's prophecy. So Lucan maybe isn't really much of a prophet at all. Maybe he just found out the information from these sky people. Who's to say? But he talks about the legend, the prophecy, the crystal prophecy, and it says, according to the legend, 400 years after the fall of civilization, in the sky, the warriors bearing light will come forth to save our people. Well, that's kind of contradictory, right? Because I thought that 200 years ago is when Tiamat and Kraken, according to the sages anyway, right? 200 years ago is when Tiamat and Kraken brought ruin to the civilizations of the north, which I would assume would also be the sky people. So are we 200 years early? I don't know. According to this guy, that's... the math isn't right, okay? I'm not sure what's going on there. This character here gives us some important information. He tells us that we came to believe there was another entity controlling the four fiends. Now that right there is very important, right? Because, as I said before, the crystals saw that the Lufenians were tilting the balance of light and darkness far in favor of light, and that's why the four warriors of darkness, or four fiends of chaos, had to come to destroy them and take them down. However, the four fiends of chaos are now causing all this chaos in the world, right? So why would they do that if everything is already in balance? Well, that's because of this line of dialogue right here. There's another entity controlling them. So to ascertain its location, the Lufenians sent out 5 warriors, but much time has passed since we've heard from them. They are actually still alive. We're going to locate them pretty soon. So how long has it been since they sent those warriors out? Does he say anything about that? Much time has passed since we heard from them. That's all he really says. Much time. How much time? 100 years? 200 years? A week? I don't know. Her lair remains in the castle. Yeah, so Tiamat took over their castle. No problem. I'm just going to go through the dialogue really quick. So the reason why we want to be able to get the Rosetta Stone and come here to learn their dialogue so that we can come to understand this person who gives us this chime. I think there was another NPC earlier too who told us that somebody went to the Mirage Tower and did like a chime or something like that, and they heard some chime sound. Sky People's strength. Right, we placed our last hope in the 5 warriors we sent out. It's been said that they fell victim to the curse of the fiends and were turned into bats. Interesting. The whole entire game, honestly, is full of bats, so unless you know exactly what location they're talking about, you wouldn't really know. Or you can maybe put 2 and 2 together and learn that they're definitely at the Chaos Shrine. But anyway, we learned that the Mirage Tower is the gateway to the Flying Floating Fortress, and that is where our last crystal rests. That's where the Warriors of Light are headed next. Okay, so this is it here in the middle of the desert. You will find the Mirage Tower. If you come inside, it kind of looks like this. It really doesn't look much different from any other dungeon that we've done before so far, except it's a little bit yellow. However, there's some very interesting enemies that we could find here, and when I find them, we'll talk a little bit more. Okay, I've yet to stumble upon the random encounter that I was hoping to find, but I'm sure we'll find it eventually. We do have these weird robot NPCs here. This is like kind of the same guy that fell out of the sky and we found behind the waterfall who gave us the warp cube. It's interesting that he refers to the Warriors of Light as Master. It's almost like they believe in the prophecy or were like programmed to follow it. So when the Warriors of Light do come around, they're kind of like programmed to serve. We also do have these like weird, you can't do anything with these, but kind of like these futuristic little panels of some sort that we could find here. That's pretty interesting. Hey, here's the random encounter that I was looking for. So these are some robots as well, except instead of serving us like they're supposed to, they're for some reason attacking us. And this kind of goes into my theory that the robots, the inventions of the Sky People were not really all that, they didn't really have full control over what they had built, right? Because otherwise those creatures wouldn't be attacking us. They should be calling us master and serving us, but here they are swinging weapons and shooting at us, which is not what they're supposed to be doing. So at some point it looks like like I've been saying anyway, the Sky People didn't have full control over those, and they were gonna end up going in a direction that the Sky People didn't want. I think it could have been a very terrible catastrophe. I think the crystals foresaw this catastrophe, and that's why the Warriors of Darkness, or Fiends of Chaos, came about, and why the crystals chose them to wipe out the Sky People and bring a balance to light and darkness. This robot, this creation, tells us that their friend left on a journey to the west. He took the warp cube and went to see our master. It's almost like this one doesn't even recognize us to be the Warriors of Light. This one doesn't even recognize us to be the master, but that's kind of what happened with the warp cube. The warp cube allows us to use the Tower of Mirage, the Mirage Tower, if you will, and it teleports us to the top, which was the Sky Castle. The floating castle is what I'm referring to. It warps us up there, hence the name Warp Cube. Okay, and we can do that from this room right here. This guy even tells us to use the warp cube to travel beyond the sky. It will take you to the flying fortress. So that's what we're going to do right now. And as if one dungeon isn't enough, we now have a second dungeon to do, the flying fortress. And this is it. So the Warriors of Light are going to traverse through here and get to Tiamat and revive the Wind Crystal. In this room you can find the ancient metal known as the adamantite. If we bring that to the dwarf, Smith the Smithy, he will craft that into the Excalibur for us, which we will see in other future Final Fantasy games, but that's another story, for another day. And for all their technology and all their advancements, they seem to have built these computers that are supposed to be able to tell the weakness of Tiamat specifically. And what they come up with is that Tiamat has no known weakness. So all their advancements, all their technology, all their inventions, all their creations, all their robots with lasers, and they have no idea what to do about such a monstrosity. That's how powerful Tiamat was. Tiamat? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below how to pronounce that, because I'm not sure. Anyway, they have an entire room, as you can see, built of just these computers that they have tried to analyze Tiamat, but to no avail. They've found no way around. They've found no way to survive. As we travel deeper into the Flying Fortress, we will find this observation window. If we look through it, it will tell us that the four forces of fire, earth, water, and wind appear as a mist converging on a single point. A point at the center of the four altars. This must be the location of the Chaos Shrine. Dun dun dun. And you'll see that that's indeed exactly what's happening. The Chaos Shrine is right there, right in the dead center of the world map. And all of their energy are being fed to the Chaos Shrine, or more specifically, the Dark Crystal. But why would that be happening? We'll find out very soon. Now, I missed this in my last playthrough of the game, but this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. I think I was calling it the Guardian when it's in fact called the War Mech. It is what I would consider to be the pinnacle of the destructive weapons invented or created by the Sky People. Probably something invented specifically to ward off something like Tiamat. However, it either couldn't stand up to Tiamat's power, which we kind of see evidence of in the crystals. Not the crystals, but the computers that we saw earlier when they were analyzing the weakness of Tiamat and just couldn't find anything. So it's possible that this thing just simply couldn't stand up to Tiamat, or they couldn't control it and have it do what they wanted it to do, which we have evidence of that as well, considering that it stands right here on the bridge connecting to Tiamat. It's almost as if it's sitting here protecting Tiamat. It's a very rare encounter, but when we do encounter it, it attacks the Warriors of Light on sight, and it is very, very relentless. It is actually considered to be, as I said before, more powerful than the final boss itself. I'm probably going to miss it in this playthrough as well, but I wish I didn't. It'd be so cool to be able to talk about it, but it is very, very rare. It is a very rare encounter. I'm going to keep trying to see if I could find it, but if not, I'm just going to go ahead and move on. But I thought that it just kind of bared mentioning. It seems like instead of attacking Tiamat or even trying to go toe-to-toe with it at all in any regard, it just kind of stands here guarding it or protecting Tiamat, as it were, which is definitely not the intention of the Sky People. They definitely wanted to defend their homes and not just watch it get destroyed. So that's, you know, that's really unfortunate for them. Anyway, I'm just going to spend a little bit more time here seeing if I could find this enemy, and like I said, if not, we'll just move on with the story. Okay, so we're going to fight Tiamat now. So in short, it seems like the inventions of the Lufenians wouldn't really heed their commands or listen to them, or some of them just malfunctioned, or they wouldn't really work properly, or they couldn't really get them to do exactly what they wanted them to do. And I think in the end that would have done nothing but just bring destruction to the land. And that's why the crystals had to step in, intervene, make the Warriors of Darkness, and take these Sky People down. Their inventions are cool, but in the end, I think that it would have gotten out of hand, and the crystals had to step in and do what needed to be done. And that's the story there.
The Lich, Merilith, the Kraken. You have defeated 3 fiends and reached my lofty perch.
Would the War Mech have been able to stand up to Tiamat had things went the way the Lufenians wanted them to go? Yeah, I definitely think so. It's really unfortunate that they couldn't get that thing to work properly.
All the better. May the image of Tiamat, fiend of wind, be the last to burn in your eyes.
Okay, let's take this thing down and restore light to the last crystal. Okay, and Tiamat is going to get wrecked like the rest of them, and the Warriors of Light are going to hold up their green crystal shard, their wind crystal shard, restore light to the final crystal. And now that we have all the crystals alight, we know that we need to get to the Chaos Shrine. However, if you remember, the Sage Lucan told us that once we have all the crystals lit back up, that he would like a word with us. So we're going to go talk to Lucan now. That also reminds me that we had, let me turn encounters off so I can talk here. We had the elves in Elfheim that were dressed in blue, and they said, well, come back to us, you know, when the time is right, and we'll reveal things to you. I think they're the ones who tell you where the airship is at, if I'm not mistaken. I could be dead wrong about that. I didn't actually go back to them in time. I guess I could go back now real quick. Let me do that, I guess. And yes, they in fact do. They say, by the power of the Levistone, a great sail rises into the sky from the sand sea below the crescent. So they basically tell you, kind of like a riddled way of saying it, but they basically tell you where the airship is at. Okay, great. So we're almost there. We're almost finished with the game. We're going to talk to these guys, head to the Chaos Shrine, and beat this game, and all will be revealed. Let's go ahead and start talking to these guys. Much like how we did before, we'll start with this guy and kind of go in a clockwise motion here. He doesn't really say anything new, but this guy says, the 4 forces gather in the Chaos Shrine, the geographic center of the 4 altars. With the forces again flowing freely, the time to go to the Chaos Shrine and strike at the root of darkness has come. Yes, indeed. The 4 crystals shine once again. The combined power of that light is the only means of breaking through the wall of time. The architect of this disaster is beyond that wall, 2,000 years in the past. You would have no memory of this, but before you wandered into this land, time flowed properly for you. But that flow of time has become warped for you now, in this time. I have no idea what you just said, little man, but it touched me. Let's keep talking to them, and I'll try to sum up everything that's going on here. The chain of time has become looped back upon itself. You must travel back in time to the link in that chain that gave birth to this cycle of wrath and destroy it. The sequence of disasters that began 400 years ago, it was triggered by events that happened only a scant few days in our past. But whoever set this in motion has now fled 2,000 years into the past. What could have happened a few days ago? I guess that would have been our encounter with Garland, maybe? Maybe that's what he's referring to? But whoever set this in motion has now fled 2,000 years into the past. I see time spiraling. Whatever went back 2,000 years in the past has brought the world into the brink of destruction, and now 2,000 years later, it travels into the past again, a cycle of wrath without end, the time loop. This is the time loop that they're talking about. That's what Final Fantasy I is all about. An ever-repeating 2,000 year cycle, the warped destiny that gives birth and rebirth to wrath. But it's no more than an illusion, a fantasy. And only the Warriors of Light can break the cycle. It's only an illusion, huh? Okay, bring the light of the 4 crystals to us. Warriors of Light, only you can do this. I did that already. What are you talking about? Are you evil? You want all the crystals for yourself? What are you talking about? Power must be directed toward its proper end. Right. 400 years ago it was when, 200 years ago it was water, then came earth and fire, the 4 forces that maketh the world. Okay, that guy doesn't say anything new. Let's talk to Sage Lucan. I am Lucan. I see a cycle of wrath, a dim light guided by destiny about which our entire future revolves. So he doesn't really say anything new. Okay, so anyway, there is a cycle of wrath that seems to... This is the part of the game that gets incredibly confusing. It's not easy to explain what's actually happening here. So everything kind of started about... we're good. I don't need to rest. It's about 400 years ago. However, some being who put all of this in motion now has fled into the past 2,000 years ago. And it's a 2,000 year cycle. So one thing that's kind of hard to explain is that if all of this started 2,000 years ago, which I don't really think that that's what they're saying, but if it did start 2,000 years ago, how come nothing evil has happened for so there's 1,600 years of peace where nothing bad was going on, and it makes me wonder why the forces of evil just kind of sat around complacently for so long, right? It's rough. It is. It's kind of hard to explain. But more on that here once we get to the Chaos Shrine. This is where the game began, and this is where the game also ends. So we're now going to enter the Chaos Shrine. These bats are the 5 warriors that were sent here. However, they were cursed by Garland or Chaos, or I believe it says that they were cursed by the 4 fiends, as a matter of fact. Yeah, they can actually talk to us now. Weird. Let's talk to them. The power the 4 fiends absorbed from the crystals was being fed into the past by the black crystal. The one distorting the beautiful light of the crystals is the one we've been looking for all along. The true root of evil, of all evil, lies just ahead. The light of the 4 we've been seeking all this time. That light will open the time portal. The portal will transport you 2,000 years into the past, to the beginning of the time loop. Shine the light of the 4 crystals on the black crystal in the center chamber. Doing so will open a time portal to this shrine as it existed 2,000 years ago. We are Sky People. We came to this shrine in an attempt to locate the source of the world's ruin. That was 400 years ago. Wow, so they have been here for 400 years. They didn't come here last week. They didn't come here 5 years ago. They came here and have been here and have been bats for 400 years. The curse of the fiends changed us into these forms and prevented us from speaking. The light of the crystals has enabled us to speak again. It's unfortunate for them that they apparently have to remain bats and they don't get to actually turn back into their proper forms. Yeah, we're going to enter the time loop now, and we'll continue attempting to explain this. Okay, so here we go. We're at the Black Crystal. And what we're going to do is we're going to shine the light of our 4 crystals. You focus the light of the 4 shining crystals, fire, earth, water, and wind, on the Black Crystal. The flow of time surges, and space begins to warp. Just one step forward, and you will travel back 2,000 years in time. And here we are at the Chaos Shrine. 2,000 years ago, it was very nice. It wasn't destroyed. It was all good here. Let's press on. Okie doke, and here we go. And what's happening? Why? We're playing the lute that Princess Sarah gave us at the beginning of the game. The lute that Garland wanted so badly. At least that's what I think his main objective was. I talked about that at the beginning of this video. The lute, I was mistaken. I thought it opened up the past, a door to come into the past, but in fact, the only purpose of this lute is to break the seal to the inner workings of the Chaos Shrine. That is the only purpose of it. So why did Garland want to come here? Could it be that Garland really isn't that bad of a guy after all? Maybe he came here to stop all of this from happening. Unfortunately, he was not a warrior of light, and therefore he would have been useless to doing that. But his heart maybe was in a good place all along. Maybe he wanted to come here and fight against the evil. In any case, we'll have to travel a little bit further into this dungeon in order to find the answer to that. Okay, here we have an orb, and the orb is actually the Lich. That's right, the Lich. The Lich existed 2,000 years ago. He wasn't a warrior of darkness at this time. However, his powers were... well, he was quite powerful. He's more powerful than what you meet when you meet him in the game originally when you fight him as a boss to reignite the Earth Crystal. He's actually going to go ahead and cast Flare on us, which is pretty unfortunate. That's quite a lot of damage, sir. So why are they more powerful in the past than they are in the future? Well, in the future when we fight them, they're under the influence of chaos. I'm going to go ahead and give him a taste of his own medicine here. So I think that, in a way, that's kind of like dimmed them down a little bit, power-wise. Okay, and that was Marilith in the past that I just wrecked. We will have to fight all of the 4 Fiends of Chaos again before we can reach the bottom of this place. Not just the Lich, but all 4 of them. So I'm going to go through and do that now. It would be cool if there were more dialogue written upon these tombstones that we kind of find throughout this place, but alas, there's nothing. It's kind of a bummer. Wish there was a little bit more lore, a little bit more insight written here, but that's okay. That's right, I came all the way back here to get the Excalibur because I totally forgot about that. Let's go ahead and have that forged real quick. There's your adamantite, sir. Good sir. Thank you, sir. Is this adamantite? Hoots! I'll use this to make you the finest sword you'll ever wield. Dune, in all my years I never crafted a finer sword. Go on, take her. She's yours. And that is how we obtain the Holy Sword Excalibur. No other lore to it. It was just some really, really rare metal that was found in the Sky Fortress, probably used by the ancients at some point. And it's effective against many types of enemies. However, I've already found the katana in there. So, which one's better? Well, it looks like the katana is. However, it does say that this is effective against many types of enemies, whereas the Masamune just simply says it's a katana without match. So which one is actually better? I'm not sure. You'd have to experiment and find out. I think I'm just going to keep the katana on just because the numbers are right there. Anyway, let me head back to where we were in the Chaos Shrine. Okay, so here we are. So was Chaos controlling the four fiends from the beginning, even from 2,000 years ago? I wouldn't say he was necessarily controlling them, but for them to work for Chaos or for some sort of darker entity doesn't really surprise me, right? They are the Warriors of Darkness and would have definitely been aligning themselves with darkness or with some kind of I don't necessarily want to say evil, because good and evil is more like in the eye of the beholder, really. Even though the Lufenians were on the side of light, would it have been good for their robots to have wrought destruction to the entire planet? No, that's not good. Could you say then that the Lufenians are evil? Not really, right? I mean, they didn't really intend for that to happen. So it's kind of a relative term. But anyway, yeah, it would make sense for them to be here. They are definitely defending Chaos or guarding his lair anyway. So when we come all the way here, right? Remember when we first fought Garland at the beginning of the game, at the beginning of this video, he just sort of vanished. He wasn't really there anymore. His body wasn't there. He was just kind of gone. And the four crystals shining their light towards the dark crystal was all it really took for there to become some sort of portal back 2,000 years in time. I was mistaken. I thought that the loot was what brought us 2,000 years back in time, but the loot is simply what gets us in the door. And that's where Garland is now. Unfortunately, Garland is, well, let's talk to him and see what we have here.
Do you remember me? I was once the most renowned knight of Cornelia. 2,000 years from now, you killed me. I am Garland. Oh, you did defeat me then, but the four great forces saved me by sending me back through time, see? So we did defeat him. We did, in fact, even kill him. But remember, his body wasn't even there anymore. It was just gone. And that's because they sent him back 2,000 years in the past. Once here, I sent the four fiends into the future. So, how do we explain that, right? Because my theory is that the crystals kind of dubbed the four fiends Warriors of Darkness and had them stop the overflux of light. But they were sent here by Garland, right? So Garland definitely plays a big part in this. Definitely. But maybe this is all part of the crystal's design in the end too, right? Where they shall once again use the four great forces to send me into the past. Hence creating this time loop. In 2,000 years, I will remember none of this. And just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he kind of becomes this. But I will be reborn again here. So even as you die again and again, I shall return. So that would kind of insinuate that this time loop has been going on for a while, right? But the Warriors of Light were also here, stuck in this time loop.
The crystals are all powerful, almighty, all-knowing, but this is something that even the crystals had no idea what to do about. Even the crystals couldn't really stop this time loop from happening. Even the Warriors of Light couldn't stop it from happening until now. So that's kind of how this ends, right? The Warriors of Light face chaos, and they die, and they lose. And the time loop begins again and again. Born again into this endless cycle that I have created. So why is he Chaos? Has he always been Chaos? Chaos and Garland are one and the same? Why is he transforming into this thing? Or maybe this thing transformed into Garland. I don't know. So his name is Garland in dialogue up until the point where the battle actually begins. So let's defeat him. The ending credits kind of shine a little bit more light on what's going on as well. The end dialogue. And with that, evil is destroyed. The time loop is broken. Chaos did not win this time. Maybe he did every other time in the time loop. Remember how he says that the Warriors of Light wouldn't remember, and they don't. Okay, but something was different this time that allowed us to win. Okay, here comes the ending dialogue. Let's read it together and see what was different here. So the time loop was severed at last. I love in the background how you can kind of hear the lute, the background music. I feel like that's the lute. Anyway, the endless struggle that raged over 2,000 years had ended, and peace prevailed once more. The light of the four crystals restored the forces of wind, water, earth, and fire. It was a mere trick of fate that had given rise to the chain of Garland's wrath. So Garland and Chaos are one and the same. That's just kind of his final form, right? But magnified by the four forces meant to guide our world, that trick of fate also gave birth to the Fiends. Monsters had run rampant as the world sank into darkness. Not the monsters part, but the one before that. The crystals wanted them to become that. Magnified by the four forces meant to guide our world. Okay, but all that is now past. With the four forces flowing as they were meant, the warriors prepared to cross time and return to the world they knew. A world where Princess Sarah, Queen Jane, and even Garland himself await. Right? Because 2,000 years from now, Garland won't remember any of this stuff. When was this fateful day that sent time spiraling into a loop? None can say. It seemed the cycle into which time had fallen would last forever. But the bravery of four young travelers changed that. They took the forces that filled the world with darkness and used them to bathe the world in light. None will ever recall the struggle the four endured, for the breaking of the chain means that it never existed. And Garland never turned evil. And that's why he's going to be waiting for us, right? But within the tales of fantasy that people tell, the memory of their deeds lives on. Tales of dwarves and elves and dragons and shining civilizations that reached the heavens even as they fell. And now their return is upon us. With the memory of their struggle buried deep in their hearts, they will quietly watch over the world. Remember always that the forces of the world must be used as they were intended, that the power of light must never be used for dark, and that the true crystals reside in your heart. For you are the warrior who crossed time. You are the bringer of light. Okay, so maybe it was that Garland. It would make more sense now. I've always said that the four fiends of chaos were the warriors of darkness. Whoops. But it would make more sense if Garland himself were a warrior of darkness. And when it says right there, you are the warrior who crossed time, you are the bringer of light, I think that's what was different. That's what was different in the time loop, and that's why it was able to finally be broken, because you are the bringer of light. I think it's referring directly to the player. The player is also a warrior of light, perhaps. And this time we stepped in and helped guide the four warriors, the four crystal warriors, the other warriors of light, along their journey. Very cool. Very cool. Anyway, of course, there's another game too called, oh golly, what's it called? Stranger of Paradise. That is supposed to kind of further explain all of this. I personally have never played it, but I have been told to do exactly that because it explains an awful lot more. I don't think there's any more to the game here. Just that. I add this star to the rest of my stars. As you can see, this is file 6. I have a good collection of stars, and that's it, guys. That concludes this playthrough of Final Fantasy 1. It's more of not so much of a playthrough, but more of like an explanation of to what the hell is actually going on. And I hope that kind of shines some light for you guys. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving me a thumbs up. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, please don't be a stranger. Post them down in the comments below so we can all hear your thoughts on this game. And if you have watched this through to its entirety, I urge you to subscribe to my channel because it really helps out the channel. It really helps me bring content like this to you guys, and then we can talk more, have more discussions, and find more lore. That's it. I haven't posted any videos in a while, so this will be the first video that I've posted in a while. I've kind of worked pretty hard on this, so I hope that you guys did like it. I know it's a little long. I'm going to try to edit it down and make it a little shorter. And yeah, so sub to me. Stay tuned, because I'm going to be doing a playthrough of Final Fantasy 3 next. And I also have a lore video or two that I would like to make on Final Fantasy 2. They won't be nearly as long as this one. This one I kind of just dumped the whole darn game into one video, and I don't think I'm going to be doing that again in the future unless you guys really like this super long format. But anyway, thanks again, guys. Thank you for joining me. Thank you guys for being warriors of light and helping me dispel darkness and bringing balance back to the world, bringing the shimmer and shine back to those crystals. We'll see you all again next time. Thank you so much. Have a good night.